This is the story of Mega Knight. The name alone sent shockwaves through the arena. His armor weighs as much as an army, and his landing marks the beginning of chaos. You've come to the right place, traveler. This is his full story. Before we begin, take a moment. Put your phone aside, find a comfortable spot, and let the sound of steel and legend carry you. If you're new here, please subscribe to help us grow our channel. And right now, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? Your messages from all around the world bring this arena to life. Now, close your eyes if you wish. The arena grows silent. The air thickens. And from the shadows, a giant descends, shaking the earth beneath his feet. This is the legend of the Mega Knight, forged in darkness, bound by honor, and unleashed with the strength of 1,000 mustaches. Let the story begin. The year was 2017, and the arenas of Clash Royale had seen many warriors rise and fall. Players had grown accustomed to the rhythm of battle, to the familiar faces of knights and giants, of princes charging with lances held high, and wizards hurling spells across the battlefield. But something was coming, something that would change everything. Whispers began to circulate in the summer months, rumors of a new legendary card unlike anything the arenas had ever witnessed. The announcement came in the sweltering heat of August, when Supercell, the masterful architects of this digital realm, revealed their latest creation. The community held its collective breath as the first images emerged. Here was a warrior clad in armor so dark it seemed to drink in the light around it, wielding massive spiked maces that looked capable of shattering mountains. His helmet bore a plume in team colors, a small touch of elegance on an otherwise overwhelming figure of raw, destructive power. But it wasn't just his appearance that caught the imagination of millions of players worldwide. It was his entrance. Unlike any troop that had come before, the Mega Knight didn't simply walk onto the battlefield. He descended from above with catastrophic force, his landing creating shockwaves that could obliterate entire squadrons of lesser troops in an instant. The description that accompanied his reveal spoke of landing with the force of 1,000 mustaches, a phrase so uniquely whimsical, yet somehow perfectly capturing the absurd magnificence of this warrior that it would become legendary in its own right. The Mega Knight represented something new in the Clash Royale universe. He was a tank, yes, with hit points that rivaled even the mighty Golem. He dealt area damage like the Valkyrie or the Wizard. But he also possessed mobility, with a jump mechanic that allowed him to leap from enemy to enemy, dealing double his normal damage on impact. This combination of durability, splash damage, and mobility created a warrior unlike anything players had encountered. He could defend against massive pushes single-handedly, then transition into a devastating counterattack with health to spare. In the lore of Clash Royale, the Mega Knight's origins remain somewhat shrouded in mystery, adding to his mystique. Official Supercell materials hint at a backstory involving Knight School, a place where aspiring warriors learned the arts of combat and chivalry. According to these glimpses into his past, the Mega Knight wasn't always the imposing figure we know today. Once, he was simply another knight, the one who faced ridicule from his peers. The reason? His hands were described as small and delicate, unsuitable for a warrior destined for glory on the battlefield. This detail adds a surprisingly human dimension to what might otherwise be just another powerful card. The Mega Knight, despite his intimidating exterior and overwhelming strength, carries with him the memory of being underestimated, of being judged as inadequate by those who should have been his brothers in arms. This backstory resonates with something universal in the human experience. The journey from being looked down upon to rising above those limitations and becoming something truly extraordinary. But the path from mock student to legendary warrior isn't fully documented in official lore, and this gap has led to fascinating speculation within the Clash Royale community. Some fans theorize that the Mega Knight was actually the builder from Clash of Clans, Supercell's other flagship title. According to this theory, the builder had somehow discovered Dark Elixir and been transformed into the armored behemoth we know as the Mega Knight. While Supercell has since disproven this particular theory, it speaks to the hunger players have for understanding where this incredible warrior came from and what journey led him to don that distinctive black armor. The truth, as revealed through official channels, is that the Mega Knight chose his path deliberately. He didn't just stumble into greatness or have it thrust upon him through some magical transformation. Instead, he forged himself into something more through dedication, training, and perhaps a touch of that determination that comes from being told you're not good enough. He acquired armor that wasn't just protective, but symbolized his transformation from ordinary to extraordinary. He took up weapons that compensated for whatever perceived weaknesses he might have had. And he developed techniques like his devastating jump attack that played to his strengths while overwhelming his opponents. The Mega Knight's arrival in Clash Royale wasn't just the addition of another card to the game. It represented the culmination of Supercell's understanding of what made Clash Royale engaging. Players wanted cards that felt powerful, that gave them that rush of excitement when deployed at the right moment. They wanted mechanics that were interesting and skill-based, that rewarded good timing and smart positioning. And they wanted characters with personality, with that indefinable quality that made them memorable beyond just their stats and abilities. In the Mega Knight, Supercell delivered on all these fronts. His 7 elixir cost meant that deploying him was a significant commitment, a moment of strategic importance in any match. His spawn damage created instant impact, punishing opponents who clumped their troops together. His jump attack added an element of timing and positioning that skilled players could master while also providing spectacular visual moments that made every match feel cinematic. And his character, from that team-colored plume to the description mentioning mustaches, gave him a personality that transcended his function as a game piece. As the release date approached, anticipation built to a fever pitch. Players theorized about strategies, dreamed up deck compositions, and debated whether the Mega Knight would be overpowered or balanced. Content creators produced videos analyzing every frame of his reveal trailer, breaking down his statistics and predicting how he would impact the meta. The Clash Royale community, always passionate, became almost obsessive in their focus on this single card. And then, on September 8th, 2017, the Mega Knight officially entered the arenas. The impact was immediate and profound, but that's a story for later. For now, what's important is understanding that the Mega Knight didn't just appear in the game. He arrived with history, with personality, with a design philosophy that made him instantly recognizable and memorable. He came bearing the weight of expectation and the promise of changing how Clash Royale was played. The dawn of the Mega Knight marked a turning point in Clash Royale's evolution. Before him, the game had its legends, its powerful cards, and beloved characters. After him, the standard for what a legendary card could be had been elevated. He set a new bar for impact, for design, for that intangible quality that makes a card not just good, but iconic. His shadow would loom large over every subsequent legendary release, with players inevitably comparing new cards to the standard he had set. But more than any of that, the Mega Knight represented something aspirational in the game's design. He showed that a character could be powerful without being simple, could have depth without being complex, could feel special without being inaccessible. He balanced being a defensive bulwark with offensive threat, being easy to understand with having a high skill ceiling, being impactful without being impossible to counter. This balance, this perfect storm of design decisions, is what transformed the Mega Knight from just another card into a legend. The armor of legends. If you've ever watched the Mega Knight descend onto the battlefield, you've witnessed one of the most visually striking moments in Clash Royale. But have you ever stopped to truly observe what makes him so imposing? Let's take our time examining every detail of this warrior's appearance. because understanding the Mega Knight's design helps us appreciate why he has become such an iconic figure in the game. The first thing anyone notices about the Mega Knight is his armor, and rightly so. This isn't the polished ceremonial armor of a parade ground knight. This is battle armor, designed for one purpose: to wade into the thickest combat and emerge victorious. The color is what immediately catches the eye, that deep, rich black that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. It's a color that speaks of night raids and shadow warfare, of a warrior who doesn't need bright colors to announce his presence because his deeds speak loud enough. But look closer, and you'll see that the black isn't uniform. The armor has texture, with plates overlapping in a way that suggests both flexibility and protection. Chainmail peeks through at the joints, that silvery gray mesh that has protected warriors for centuries in our own world. This attention to detail matters because it grounds the Mega Knight in a tradition of actual medieval warfare, while simultaneously marking him as something beyond ordinary. The chainmail suggests that underneath all that heavy plate, there's still a need for mobility, a reminder that even the mightiest warriors must be able to move. The chest plate is particularly impressive, a massive piece of curved metal that could probably deflect a cannonball. It's adorned with detailing that catches what little light reflects off the dark surface, creating subtle patterns that hint at craftsmanship beyond mere functionality. This is armor that was made by a master, someone who understood that protection and artistry need not be mutually exclusive. The belt that cinches around his waist bears his team's colors, a splash of vibrant identity on an otherwise dark canvas. This detail is important because it shows that despite his overwhelming individual presence, the Mega Knight still serves a cause larger than himself. Then there's the helmet, and oh, what a helmet it is. It covers most of his face, leaving only his eyes visible, and what eyes they are. Blue and piercing, they're the only human element visible on this walking fortress. Those eyes have become iconic, featured in countless memes and fan art, because they're the window to whatever person exists inside all that armor. They convey determination, focus, perhaps even a hint of that old pain from his days of being mocked. But they also show confidence, the absolute certainty of a warrior who knows his worth and his power. Atop the helmet sits a plume in team colors, matching the belt. This detail is fascinating because it's purely ceremonial, serving no protective or practical function. In a design focused on brutal efficiency, the plume is a concession to pageantry, to the idea that warriors aren't just weapons but symbols. It waves as he moves, a bright flag announcing his presence, ensuring that even if somehow his massive frame and dark armor weren't enough, the plume would catch the eye. It's saying, yes, I'm here, and yes, you should be worried. But perhaps the most distinctive elements of the Mega Knight's appearance are his weapons, those massive spiked maces that serve as his fists. These aren't held weapons that can be dropped or disarmed. They're part of him, integrated into his gauntlets, making his very hands weapons of devastating power. The spikes gleam wickedly, designed not just to crush but to pierce, to maximize damage with every impact. The frames holding them are golden, a rare touch of warmth in his color palette, and they suggest that these weapons are special, perhaps even custom forged for this particular warrior. The design of these mace fists is brilliant from a practical standpoint. They're large enough to deal splash damage, each swing capable of striking multiple enemies. They're heavily weighted, adding momentum to his attacks and making each hit feel impactful. But they're also attached to his armor system, meaning his incredible strength isn't just in his arms, but distributed through his entire frame. When the Mega Knight punches, he's not just using arm strength, he's using his whole body, all that weight and power channeled through those spiked maces into his unfortunate targets. The overall silhouette of the Mega Knight is what game designers would call readable, even in the chaos of battle. Even when the screen is filled with troops and spells and effects, the Mega Knight's distinctive shape is immediately recognizable. He's broad and tall, with that slight forward lean that suggests coiled power ready to be unleashed. His proportions are just exaggerated enough to feel powerful without being cartoonish, walking that fine line between realistic and stylized that Clash Royale's art direction handles so well. Interestingly, the Mega Knight's design manages to feel heavy without feeling slow. This is a feat of visual communication that many games struggle with. The armor looks like it should weigh him down, should make him ponderous and easy to avoid. But the way he moves, with that medium speed that matches a Mega Minion or regular Knight, creates a dissonance that actually makes him more threatening. He shouldn't be that fast given his size and armor, but he is, and that violation of expectations is part of what makes him feel dangerous. The team-colored elements, the plume and belt, are more important than they might first appear. Clash Royale is a game where you're always fighting for your team, whether that's red or blue. These color touches ensure that even in the heat of battle, players can instantly identify which side a Mega Knight is on. It's a small detail that prevents confusion and frustration, but it's also a statement that the Mega Knight, for all his individual power, is still part of a larger force, still fighting for a cause beyond himself. When the Mega Knight Evolution was released years later, the design team made interesting choices in how to distinguish it from the original. The armor took on an amethyst hue, that rich purple that has long been associated with royalty and power. The eyes changed from blue to magenta with glowing pink sclera, giving him an almost supernatural appearance. The spikes on his maces gained golden frames and handles at their base, and his chainmail developed gold linings. Even his belt was upgraded with golden spikes and the card evolution symbol. These changes maintained the core of what made the original Mega Knight recognizable while elevating him to something even more special, something that literally glowed with power. The beauty of the Mega Knight's design is how it tells a story without words. You can look at him and understand immediately what he does, what he's about. He's a tank, obvious from his massive frame and heavy armor. He deals area damage, suggested by those wide swinging maces. He's aggressive, conveyed through his forward-leaning posture and those intense eyes. And he's legendary, communicated through every carefully chosen detail, from the quality of his armor to that ceremonial plume. But beyond function, beyond gameplay communication, the Mega Knight's design succeeds because it creates an emotional response. When you deploy him, you feel powerful. When your opponent deploys him against you, you feel threatened. That's the mark of exceptional character design, when the visual presentation creates genuine emotional engagement. The Mega Knight doesn't just look cool, he makes you feel something, and that's what elevates him from a well-designed game piece to an icon. The armor, the weapons, the colors, the silhouette, they all work together to create a character that's instantly memorable and endlessly appealing. In a game filled with visually interesting characters, the Mega Knight stands out, and that's no accident. It's the result of careful thought, skilled artistry, and a deep understanding of what makes a design not just functional but legendary. The force of 1,000 mustaches, let's talk about power. Not just any power, but the kind that reshapes battlefields, that turns the tide of matches in seconds, that makes opponents' hearts sink when they see it deployed against them. Let's talk about the Mega Knight's abilities, and more specifically, let's explore what it means to land with the force of 1,000 mustaches. That phrase, the force of 1,000 mustaches, is pure Clash Royale magic. It's whimsical and precise at once, giving us this absurd mental image while also communicating something important. This warrior hits hard from the moment he appears. But what does that actually mean in gameplay terms? Let's break it down, piece by piece, mechanic by mechanic, until we understand exactly what makes the Mega Knight such a devastating force. The Mega Knight costs 7 elixir to deploy, which immediately tells us something crucial. In Clash Royale's economy of battle, 7 elixir is expensive. It's the same cost as a golem, a P.E.K.K.A., a royal giant. When you play the Mega Knight, you're committing a significant portion of your resources to this single unit. That means he needs to deliver value. And oh, does he ever? This is the story of Mega Knight. The name alone sends shockwaves through the arena. His armor weighs as much as an army, and his landing marks the beginning of chaos. You've come to the right place, traveler. This ... is his full story. Before we begin, take a moment. Put your phone aside, find a comfortable spot, and let the sound of steel and legend carry you. If you're new here, please subscribe to help us grow our channel. And right now, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? Your messages from all around the world bring this arena to life. Now, close your eyes if you wish. The arena grows silent, the air thickens, and from the shadows, a giant descends, shaking the earth beneath his feet. This is the legend of the Mega Knight, forged in darkness, bound by honor, and unleashed with the strength of 1,000 mustaches. Let the story begin. The year was 2017, and the arenas of Clash Royale had seen many warriors rise and fall. Players had grown accustomed to the rhythm of battle, to the familiar faces of knights and giants, of princes charging with lances held high and wizards hurling spells across the battlefield. But something was coming, something that would change everything. Whispers began to circulate in the summer months, rumors of a new legendary card, unlike anything the arenas had ever witnessed. The announcement came in the sweltering heat of August, when Supercell, the masterful architects of this digital realm, revealed their latest creation. The community held its collective breath as the first images emerged. Here was a warrior clad in armor so dark it seemed to drink in the light around it, wielding massive spiked maces that looked capable of shattering mountains. His helmet bore a plume and team colors, a small touch of elegance on an otherwise overwhelming figure of raw, destructive power. But it wasn't just his appearance that caught the imagination of millions of players worldwide. It was his entrance. Unlike any troop that had come before, the Mega Knight didn't simply walk onto the battlefield. He descended from above with catastrophic force, his landing creating shockwaves that could obliterate entire squadrons of lesser troops in an instant. The description that accompanied his reveal spoke of landing with the force of 1,000 mustaches, a phrase so uniquely whimsical, yet somehow perfectly capturing the absurd magnificence of this warrior, that it would become legendary in its own right. The Mega Knight represented something new in the Clash Royale universe. He was a tank, yes, with hit points that rivaled even the mighty Golem. He dealt area damage like the Valkyrie or the Wizard. But he also possessed mobility, with a jump mechanic that allowed him to leap from enemy to enemy, dealing double his normal damage on impact. This combination of durability, splash damage, and mobility created a warrior unlike anything players had encountered. He could defend against massive pushes single-handedly, then transition into a devastating counterattack with health to spare. In the lore of Clash Royale, the Mega Knight's origins remain somewhat shrouded in mystery, adding to his mystique. Official Supercell materials hint at a backstory involving Night School, a place where aspiring warriors learned the arts of combat and chivalry. According to these glimpses into his past, the Mega Knight wasn't always the imposing figure we know today. Once, he was simply another knight, but one who faced ridicule from his peers. The reason? His hands were described as small and delicate, unsuitable for a warrior destined for glory on the battlefield. This detail adds a surprisingly human dimension to what might otherwise be just another powerful card. The Mega Knight, despite his intimidating exterior and overwhelming strength, carries with him the memory of being underestimated, of being judged as inadequate by those who should have been his brothers in arms. This backstory resonates with something universal in the human experience. The journey from being looked down upon to rising above those limitations and becoming something truly extraordinary. But the path from mock student to legendary warrior isn't fully documented in official lore, and this gap has led to fascinating speculation within the Clash Royale community. Some fans theorize that the Mega Knight was actually the builder from Clash of Clans, Supercell's other flagship title. According to this theory, the builder had somehow discovered Dark Elixir and been transformed into the armored behemoth we know as the Mega Knight. While Supercell has since disproven this particular theory, it speaks to the hunger players have for understanding where this incredible warrior came from and what journey led him to don that distinctive black armor. The truth, as revealed through official channels, is that the Mega Knight chose his path deliberately. He didn't just stumble into greatness or have it thrust upon him through some magical transformation. Instead, he forged himself into something more through dedication, training, and perhaps a touch of that determination that comes from being told you're not good enough. He acquired armor that wasn't just protective, but symbolized his transformation from ordinary to extraordinary. He took up weapons that compensated for whatever perceived weaknesses he might have had. And he developed techniques like his devastating jump attack that played to his strengths while overwhelming his opponents. The Mega Knight's arrival in Clash Royale wasn't just the addition of another card to the game. It represented the culmination of Supercell's understanding of what made Clash Royale engaging. Players wanted cards that felt powerful, that gave them that rush of excitement when deployed at the right moment. They wanted mechanics that were interesting and skill-based, that rewarded good timing and smart positioning. And they wanted characters with personality, with that indefinable quality that made them memorable beyond just their stats and abilities. In the Mega Knight, Supercell delivered on all these fronts. His 7 elixir cost meant that deploying him was a significant commitment, a moment of strategic importance in any match. His spawn damage created instant impact, punishing opponents who clumped their troops together. His jump attack added an element of timing and positioning that skilled players could master while also providing spectacular visual moments that made every match feel cinematic. And his character, from that team-colored plume to the description mentioning mustaches, gave him a personality that transcended his function as a game piece. As the release date approached, anticipation built to a fever pitch. Players theorized about strategies, dreamed up deck compositions, and debated whether the Mega Knight would be overpowered or balanced. Content creators produced videos analyzing every frame of his reveal trailer, breaking down his statistics and predicting how he would impact the meta. The Clash Royale community, always passionate, became almost obsessive in their focus on this single card. And then, on September 8th, 2017, the Mega Knight officially entered the arenas. The impact was immediate and profound, but that's a story for later. For now, what's important is understanding that the Mega Knight didn't just appear in the game. He arrived with history, with personality, with a design philosophy that made him instantly recognizable and memorable. He came bearing the weight of expectation and the promise of changing how Clash Royale was played. The dawn of the Mega Knight marked a turning point in Clash Royale's evolution. Before him, the game had its legends, its powerful cards, and beloved characters. After him, the standard for what a legendary card could be had been elevated. He set a new bar for impact, for design, for that intangible quality that makes a card not just good, but iconic. His shadow would loom large over every subsequent legendary release, with players inevitably comparing new cards to the standard he had set. But more than any of that, the Mega Knight represented something aspirational in the game's design. He showed that a character could be powerful without being simple, could have depth without being complex, could feel special without being inaccessible. He balanced being a defensive bulwark with offensive threat, being easy to understand with having a high skill ceiling, being impactful without being impossible to counter. This balance, this perfect storm of design decisions, is what transformed the Mega Knight from just another card into a legend. The armor of legends. If you've ever watched the Mega Knight descend onto the battlefield, you've witnessed one of the most visually striking moments in Clash Royale. But have you ever stopped to truly observe what makes him so imposing? Let's take our time examining every detail of this warrior's appearance, because understanding the Mega Knight's design helps us appreciate why he has become such an iconic figure in the game. The first thing anyone notices about the Mega Knight is his armor, and rightly so. This isn't the polished ceremonial armor of a parade ground knight. This is battle armor, designed for one purpose: to wade into the thickest combat and emerge victorious. The color is what immediately catches the eye, that deep, rich black that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. It's a color that speaks of night raids and shadow warfare, of a warrior who doesn't need bright colors to announce his presence because his deeds speak loud enough. But look closer, and you'll see that the black isn't uniform. The armor has texture, with plates overlapping in a way that suggests both flexibility and protection. Chainmail peeks through at the joints, that silvery gray mesh that has protected warriors for centuries in our own world. This attention to detail matters because it grounds the Mega Knight in a tradition of actual medieval warfare, while simultaneously marking him as something beyond ordinary. The chainmail suggests that underneath all that heavy plate, there's still a need for mobility, a reminder that even the mightiest warriors must be able to move. The chest plate is particularly impressive, a massive piece of curved metal that could probably deflect a cannonball. It's adorned with detailing that catches what little light reflects off the dark surface, creating subtle patterns that hint at craftsmanship beyond mere functionality. This is armor that was made by a master, someone who understood that protection and artistry need not be mutually exclusive. The belt that cinches around his waist bears his team's colors, a splash of vibrant identity on an otherwise dark canvas. This detail is important because it shows that despite his overwhelming individual presence, the Mega Knight still serves a cause larger than himself. Then there's the helmet, and oh, what a helmet it is. It covers most of his face, leaving only his eyes visible, and what eyes they are. Blue and piercing, they're the only human element visible on this walking fortress. Those eyes have become iconic, featured in countless memes and fan art, because they're the window to whatever person exists inside all that armor. They convey determination, focus, perhaps even a hint of that old pain from his days of being mocked. But they also show confidence, the absolute certainty of a warrior who knows his worth and his power. Atop the helmet sits a plume in team colors, matching the belt. This detail is fascinating because it's purely ceremonial, serving no protective or practical function. In a design focused on brutal efficiency, the plume is a concession to pageantry, to the idea that warriors aren't just weapons but symbols. It waves as he moves, a bright flag announcing his presence, ensuring that even if somehow his massive frame and dark armor weren't enough, the plume would catch the eye. It's saying, yes, I'm here, and yes, you should be worried. But perhaps the most distinctive elements of the Mega Knight's appearance are his weapons, those massive spiked maces that serve as his fists. These aren't held weapons that can be dropped or disarmed. They're part of him, integrated into his gauntlets, making his very hands weapons of devastating power. The spikes gleam wickedly, designed not just to crush but to pierce, to maximize damage with every impact. The frames holding them are golden, a rare touch of warmth in his color palette, and they suggest that these weapons are special, perhaps even custom forged for this particular warrior. The design of these mace fists is brilliant from a practical standpoint. They're large enough to deal splash damage, each swing capable of striking multiple enemies. They're heavily weighted, adding momentum to his attacks and making each hit feel impactful. But they're also attached to his armor system, meaning his incredible strength isn't just in his arms, but distributed through his entire frame. When the Mega Knight punches, he's not just using arm strength, he's using his whole body. all that weight and power channeled through those spiked maces into his unfortunate targets. The overall silhouette of the Mega Knight is what game designers would call readable, even in the chaos of battle. Even when the screen is filled with troops and spells and effects, the Mega Knight's distinctive shape is immediately recognizable. He's broad and tall, with that slight forward lean that suggests coiled power ready to be unleashed. His proportions are just exaggerated enough to feel powerful without being cartoonish, walking that fine line between realistic and stylized that Clash Royale's art direction handles so well. Interestingly, the Mega Knight's design manages to feel heavy without feeling slow. This is a feat of visual communication that many games struggle with. The armor looks like it should weigh him down, should make him ponderous and easy to avoid. But the way he moves, with that medium speed that matches a Mega Minion or regular Knight, creates a dissonance that actually makes him more threatening. He shouldn't be that fast given his size and armor, but he is, and that violation of expectations is part of what makes him feel dangerous. The team-colored elements, the plume and belt, are more important than they might first appear. Clash Royale is a game where you're always fighting for your team, whether that's red or blue. These color touches ensure that even in the heat of battle, players can instantly identify which side a Mega Knight is on. It's a small detail that prevents confusion and frustration, but it's also a statement that the Mega Knight, for all his individual power, is still part of a larger force, still fighting for a cause beyond himself. When the Mega Knight Evolution was released years later, the design team made interesting choices in how to distinguish it from the original. The armor took on an amethyst hue, that rich purple that has long been associated with royalty and power. The eyes changed from blue to magenta with glowing pink sclera, giving him an almost supernatural appearance. The spikes on his maces gained golden frames and handles at their base, and his chainmail developed gold linings. Even his belt was upgraded with golden spikes and the card evolution symbol. These changes maintained the core of what made the original Mega Knight recognizable while elevating him to something even more special, something that literally glowed with power. The beauty of the Mega Knight's design is how it tells a story without words. You can look at him and understand immediately what he does, what he's about. He's a tank, obvious from his massive frame and heavy armor. He deals area damage, suggested by those wide swinging maces. He's aggressive, conveyed through his forward-leaning posture and those intense eyes. And he's legendary, communicated through every carefully chosen detail, from the quality of his armor to that ceremonial plume. But beyond function, beyond gameplay communication, the Mega Knight's design succeeds because it creates an emotional response. When you deploy him, you feel powerful. When your opponent deploys him against you, you feel threatened. That's the mark of exceptional character design, when the visual presentation creates genuine emotional engagement. The Mega Knight doesn't just look cool, he makes you feel something, and that's what elevates him from a well-designed game piece to an icon. The armor, the weapons, the colors, the silhouette, they all work together to create a character that's instantly memorable and endlessly appealing. In a game filled with visually interesting characters, the Mega Knight stands out, and that's no accident. It's the result of careful thought, skilled artistry, and a deep understanding of what makes a design not just functional but legendary. The force of 1,000 mustaches, let's talk about power. Not just any power, but the kind that reshapes battlefields, that turns the tide of matches in seconds, that makes opponents' hearts sink when they see it deployed against them. Let's talk about the Mega Knight's abilities, and more specifically, let's explore what it means to land with the force of 1,000 mustaches. That phrase, the force of 1,000 mustaches, is pure Clash Royale magic. It's whimsical and precise at once, giving us this absurd mental image while also communicating something important. This warrior hits hard from the moment he appears. But what does that actually mean in gameplay terms? Let's break it down. Piece by piece, mechanic by mechanic, until we understand exactly what makes the Mega Knight such a devastating force. The Mega Knight costs 7 elixir to deploy, which immediately tells us something crucial. In Clash Royale's economy of battle, 7 elixir is expensive. It's the same cost as a golem, a P.E.K.K.A., a royal giant. When you play the Mega Knight, you're committing a significant portion of your resources to this single unit. That means he needs to deliver value. And oh, does he ever? The first ability that defines the Mega Knight is his spawn damage. Unlike most troops that simply appear on the battlefield and then begin attacking, the Mega Knight announces his arrival with explosive force. The moment he lands, he deals significant area damage in a 360-degree radius around himself. This isn't a small amount of damage either. It's enough to completely eliminate several types of support troops, to severely wound others, and to scatter any tight formation of enemies with the knockback effect it creates. The spawn damage is slightly less than a raw delivery, but it's still devastating when used correctly. A well-placed Mega Knight can land on top of a push and instantly destroy musketeers, electro wizards, ice wizards, wizards, witches, and numerous other support troops. Even tougher units like evolved barbarians can be eliminated in that initial impact. This creates immediate value, potentially trading 7 elixir for 10 or 12, or even more elixir worth of enemy troops in a single moment. But the spawn damage does more than just eliminate troops. It disrupts formation. When the Mega Knight lands, enemies are knocked back, scattered, their carefully arranged positions destroyed in an instant. A well-organized push suddenly becomes a chaotic mess, with troops no longer supporting each other, no longer attacking in unison. This disruption is often as valuable as the damage itself, because it buys time for your towers to attack, for other troops to arrive, for the situation to turn in your favor. The knockback specifically deserves attention because it's one of the most underrated aspects of the spawn damage. It's not just pushing troops back a tile or two. It's a substantial displacement that can completely change engagement distances, can move troops out of range of their targets, can separate tanks from their support. Skilled players learn to use this knockback as a tool, positioning their Mega Knight spawns not just for maximum damage, but for maximum disruption. Then there's the jump attack, and this is where the Mega Knight truly becomes unique. If there are ground units between 3.5 and 5 tiles away from him, the Mega Knight doesn't just walk toward them. He stops, charges up for about 9/10 of a second, and then launches himself through the air in a spectacular leap that covers that distance in an instant. When he lands, he deals double his normal damage in an area, along with knockback once again. The jump attack transforms the Mega Knight from a simple tank into something far more dynamic. He's not slowly plodding toward enemy troops. He's actively hunting them, leaping from target to target like some kind of armored predator. This gives him incredible threat projection. An enemy behind your Mega Knight isn't safe. A troop trying to maintain distance isn't safe. He's constantly pressuring, constantly threatening to close the gap and deliver that devastating double damage impact. The double damage of the jump attack matters enormously. The Mega Knight's base damage is moderate, not particularly impressive for his cost. But when he jumps, that damage doubles, and suddenly he's hitting hard enough to seriously threaten medium health troops, to chunk tanks, to clear swarms with ease. The jump resets his attack timer too, meaning he can land, deal the jump damage, and immediately follow up with a regular attack, creating a burst of damage that can overwhelm enemies before they have a chance to respond. The timing of the jump is interesting from a gameplay perspective. That 9/10 of a second charge-up time is long enough for skilled opponents to react, to place a troop closer to the Mega Knight and steal his attention, to use knockback or stuns to interrupt the jump. But it's short enough that it's not easy to respond to, especially in the chaos of battle. It creates this tension where both players are thinking about that jump. the Mega Knight player looking for opportunities to let it fly, the opponent trying to prevent or mitigate it. The range parameters for the jump, 3.5 to 5 tiles, are carefully chosen. Too short, and it would trigger constantly, becoming unpredictable and hard to control. Too long, and he'd be jumping across the entire arena, which would be absurd even by Clash Royale standards. The actual range means that the Mega Knight tends to jump over one-tile gaps to clear small obstacles, to reach troops that are trying to maintain a safe distance but not quite managing it. It feels natural, like something a heavily armored warrior genuinely might do in combat. When the Mega Knight isn't spawning or jumping, he's attacking with regular swings of those massive maces. These attacks are area damage, meaning he can hit multiple troops at once if they're grouped together. The attack happens every 1.7 seconds, which is relatively slow, but acceptable given the splash damage and his other abilities. His range is 1.2 tiles, classified as melee medium, which means he has just slightly more reach than basic melee troops. This matters because it means he can sometimes hit troops that think they safely out of his range. The Mega Knight's health pool is one of his most important attributes. At tournament standard, he has nearly 4,000 hit points. That's massive, making him one of the tankiest troops in the game. This health isn't just about surviving. It's about having the staying power to reach enemy towers, to absorb huge amounts of damage while his teammates deal with threats, to transition from defense to offense without dying in the process. A Mega Knight that survives defending against a push and still has half his health can become a nightmare for opponents to deal with. His movement speed is medium, the same as a knight, mega minion, or barbarian. This is faster than tanks like the Giant or Golem, but slower than cards like the Prince or Bandit. It is a balanced speed that lets him keep up with most pushes while not being so fast that he is impossible to intercept. The medium speed combined with his jump creates this interesting rhythm where he is alternating between steady advancement and sudden leaps, making his movement pattern distinctive and somewhat unpredictable. One crucial limitation of the Mega Knight is that he can only target ground troops. He cannot attack air units at all. This is a significant weakness that prevents him from being overwhelming. A Mega Knight alone cannot deal with a minion horde, cannot touch a baby dragon or mega minion, cannot prevent a balloon from reaching his tower. This weakness is intentional and important, creating counterplay opportunities and ensuring that the Mega Knight needs support despite his individual power. The Mega Knight's abilities create interesting interactions with other game mechanics. He can be stunned mid-jump by Electro Wizard or Zap, causing the jump to fail. He can be pulled by Tornado, repositioned mid-leap to land somewhere unexpected. He can be frozen, rooted, slowed, affected by all the various control effects in the game. But none of these completely shut him down. They merely delay him, buy time, create opportunities. The Mega Knight is resilient in a way that goes beyond his health pool, his multiple abilities ensuring he's always threatening even when countered. When the Mega Knight evolution was released, it added a new dimension to his abilities, the uppercut. With each regular attack, the evolved Mega Knight performs an uppercut that launches the targeted troop back 4 tiles toward the nearest enemy crown tower. This creates a combo with his jump, because those 4 tiles are exactly enough to trigger another jump attack. Suddenly, the evolved Mega Knight can lock single targets in a devastating loop of uppercuts and jumps, repeatedly hitting them and pushing them back until they reach the tower. The force of 1,000 mustaches isn't just a clever phrase. It's a perfect encapsulation of what makes the Mega Knight special. He has impact from the moment he appears. He has mobility that belies his size. He has staying power that lets him do his job, and then some. He has multiple ways to apply pressure and create value. All of these combine to create a card that feels powerful to play, threatening to face, and endlessly interesting to master. Understanding these abilities Really internalizing how they work and interact is essential to using the Mega Knight effectively or countering him successfully. Every mechanic has its purpose, its strengths, its limitations. The spawn damage punishes clumping and creates immediate impact. The jump attack provides mobility and burst damage. The regular attacks clear swarms and chip at tanks. The massive health pool provides staying power. And all of it together creates a warrior that truly does land with the force of 1,000 mustaches, whatever that force might actually be. September 8, 2017. A legend arrives. There are dates in gaming that become etched in collective memory. Moments when something changed, when the before and after were distinctly different. For Clash Royale players, September 8, 2017 is one of those dates. It's the day the Mega Knight officially entered the game, and the arenas would never be quite the same. But the story of the Mega Knight's release actually begins earlier, in the final days of August, when Supercell offered players their first chance to obtain this new legendary. On August 25th, the Mega Knight Challenge was launched. This was a special event where players could build a deck that included the Mega Knight and battle others doing the same. The grand prize? Achieving 12 wins would grant you the Mega Knight early, before his official release, letting you be among the first to wield this new warrior in regular battles. The challenge itself was an experience, a glimpse into how this new card would change the game. Players experimented with different deck compositions, trying to find synergies with the Mega Knight's unique abilities. Some treated him as a defensive anchor, using his spawn damage to shut down pushes. Others built aggressive decks, pairing him with fast troops to create overwhelming pressure. Every match taught players something new about positioning, timing, the subtle art of when to spawn and when to jump. For those who managed to win that 12th game, the reward was more than just early access. It was bragging rights, the ability to surprise opponents who hadn't yet faced the Mega Knight in ladder matches, who didn't know his patterns and weaknesses. Those early adopters became unwitting teachers, their matches spreading knowledge about this new threat throughout the community. But Supercell didn't stop with just the challenge. From August 31st through September 4th, they offered a special shop deal for players at Arena 10 and above. You could purchase super magical chests, and these chests had a 50% chance to contain the Mega Knight with your first purchase, guaranteed with the second. This was an interesting approach, letting players who were willing to spend gems obtain the card without the skill requirement of winning 12 challenge matches. It democratized access somewhat, ensuring that the Mega Knight wouldn't be exclusively in the hands of the game's most skilled players. As these pre-release days passed, the community buzzed with discussion. YouTube was flooded with videos analyzing the Mega Knight, theorizing about his impact, showcasing spectacular plays from the challenge. Reddit threads dissected his statistics, compared him to other tanks and splash damage dealers, debated whether he was overpowered or balanced or maybe even underwhelming. Twitter erupted with memes, with clips, with that peculiar mixture of excitement and anxiety that comes when something new and powerful is about to change a beloved game. The anticipation built to an almost unbearable crescendo. Players who had gotten the Mega Knight early were either keeping quiet about their experiences or loudly proclaiming that the meta was about to change forever. Those who hadn't obtained him yet were both eager to try him and dreading facing him. Content creators were preparing day one videos, planning their deck guides and strategy breakdowns, ready to capitalize on the moment. Then September 8th arrived, a Friday, perfectly timed for weekend gameplay when player counts were highest. The update went live, and suddenly the Mega Knight was available in chests, in the shop, through trading, through all the normal means of card acquisition. For players in Arena 11 and above, or for anyone lucky enough to get him from a legendary chest, the Mega Knight was now accessible. The first few hours after release were chaotic in the best possible way. The arenas were flooded with players trying out their new Mega Knight, or facing him for the first time, or both. Matches had a different rhythm, an edge of unpredictability as players learned through experience what the Mega Knight could and couldn't do. Some early attempts were disastrous, players wasting their 7 elixir on poorly positioned spawns or walking the Mega Knight into hard counters they didn't yet recognize. Other attempts were triumphant, perfectly timed defensive spawns that shut down massive pushes and created devastating counterattacks. The community response was immediate and loud. Videos analyzing the release day started appearing within hours. Content creators racing to be first with their takes on whether the Mega Knight lived up to the hype. The consensus was nuanced, which is always interesting with new releases. Yes, the Mega Knight was powerful. Yes, he could do spectacular things. But he also had clear weaknesses, clear counters, clear situations where he wasn't the right play. What became apparent quickly was that the Mega Knight had a high skill floor, but an even higher skill ceiling. Placing him randomly might occasionally work, but true mastery required understanding spawn timing, predicting opponent place, managing elixir to support him properly. The jump attack in particular needed practice to use effectively, understanding when to let it trigger and when to prevent it by placing troops closer. The meta didn't shift overnight, but it definitely shifted. Decks that relied heavily on clumping troops together suddenly found themselves vulnerable to a 7 elixir response that could shut them down completely. Cards that could counter the Mega Knight, particularly Inferno Tower and Peke, saw increased usage. Deck building conversations changed, with how do I deal with Mega Knight becoming a standard question that had to be answered before a deck was considered viable. Within the first week, certain deck archetypes began to emerge. Mega Knight paired with Inferno Dragon became popular, each covering the other's weaknesses. Mega Knight with Miner and Poison formed the core of a control deck that could defend and chip simultaneously. Bridge spam decks added Mega Knight as a defensive piece that could turn into an offensive threat. The guard's versatility meant he fit into multiple strategies, each leveraging different aspects of his kit, but it wasn't all smooth sailing for the Mega Knight. Even on release day, skilled players were finding and exploiting his weaknesses. They learned that single, high-damage units like P.E.K.K.A. and Mini P.E.K.K.A. could duel him effectively. They discovered that pulling him with buildings could waste his jump and make him walk long distances. They realized that air troops were his kryptonite, that a well-played minion horde of Baby Dragon could take him down for a massive positive elixir trade. The first weekend saw an explosion of Mega Knight usage, as expected. He was new, he was exciting, he was powerful. Everyone wanted to try him, to experience that satisfying impact of his spawn damage, that spectacular arc of his jump attack. But as the weekend progressed and then rolled into the next week, usage stabilized. The novelty wore off. Players returned to their preferred deck archetypes or adapted them to include or counter the Mega Knight as needed. One of the interesting aspects of the release was how it validated Supercell's design approach. The Mega Knight was clearly strong, a legendary that felt legendary, but he wasn't breaking the game. Win rates with him were good, but not overwhelming. He had clear counterplay. He added strategic depth rather than removing it. This balance on release, while not perfect, showed sophisticated game design, suggesting that Supercell had learned from previous legendary releases and applied those lessons here. The community's creative response to the Mega Knight was immediate and entertaining. Memes proliferated, many focusing on that force of 1,000 mustaches line. Fan art appeared, depicting the Mega Knight in various styles and scenarios. Players created montages of spectacular plays, moments where the Mega Knight single-handedly defended against seemingly unstoppable pushes. The cultural impact extended beyond just the game mechanics into genuine affection for the character. As September gave way to October, the Mega Knight settled into the game's ecosystem. He wasn't in every deck, which would have been a sign of being overpowered. But he was common enough that every player had to account for him, had to have a plan for how their deck would handle him. This is the sweet spot for any powerful card, influential without being dominant, worth playing but not mandatory. The release also marked a shift in player expectations for what legendary cards could be. The Mega Knight set a new standard for impact, for spectacle, for that feeling of playing something truly special. Future legendary releases would be compared to him, evaluated against the benchmark he established. Some would fall short, others would meet or exceed it, but none could ignore it. September 8th, 2017 wasn't just the day a new card was released. It was the day Clash Royale demonstrated its maturity as a game, its ability to add complexity while maintaining balance, to create excitement while preserving competitive integrity. The arena shakes, early impact and community reaction. The days following September 8th were a period of discovery, adjustment, and sometimes chaos. The Clash Royale community, millions strong across the globe, was experiencing the Mega Knight phenomenon in real time, and the reactions ranged from delight to despair, from awe to frustration, from strategic fascination to meme-worthy absurdity. In those first weeks, the forums and social media platforms dedicated to Clash Royale were ablaze with discussion. Reddit's Clash Royale subreddit saw post after post analyzing the new card. Some players praised Supercell for creating something genuinely exciting and powerful that lived up to its legendary status. These players appreciated the spectacle of the Mega Knight, the way his arrival could turn a match around, the skill expression in timing his spawns perfectly to maximize value. But not everyone was celebrating. A vocal segment of the community felt that the Mega Knight was overtuned, too strong for his cost. These critics pointed to matches where a single Mega Knight spawn had wiped out 15 or 20 elixir worth of troops, creating massive swing advantages that felt impossible to recover from. They argued that his combination of tankiness, damage, and mobility was too much, that no single card should be able to defend and counterpush so effectively. The dividing community opinion revealed something interesting about Clash Royale's player base and game design in general. Players who had adapted quickly, who had learned the Mega Knight's patterns and incorporated counters into their decks, tended to view him as strong but manageable. Those who were still struggling to deal with him, or whose preferred deck archetypes were particularly vulnerable to him, saw him as a problem that needed addressing. Content creators played a crucial role in shaping community perception during this period. Popular YouTubers and streamers were producing daily content featuring the Mega Knight, and their takes varied widely. Some, like CWA Gaming and Clash with Shane, put out detailed guides on how to use the Mega Knight effectively and, just as importantly, how to counter him. These educational videos help players understand that while the Mega Knight was powerful, he wasn't unbeatable. Other creators leaned into the spectacle, producing highlight reels of the most devastating Mega Knight plays. These videos were entertaining, sometimes hilarious, but they also contributed to a perception that the Mega Knight was unstoppable. When you watch a compilation of perfectly executed Mega Knight spawns, each one obliterating enemy pushes and leading to 3 crown victories, it's easy to forget all the times the Mega Knight was countered or didn't provide value. Memes, as they always do in gaming communities, flourished. The force of 1,000 mustaches line became a running joke, spawning countless variations and images. Players created memes about the panic of seeing a Mega Knight land on their push, about the satisfaction of perfectly timing a spawn, about the specific type of player who immediately added Mega Knight to every deck regardless of synergy. These memes, while humorous, also served as a form of communal processing, a way for the community to collectively work through their feelings about this new addition to the game. One particular aspect of the early Mega Knight meta that generated discussion was what players called panic spawning. This referred to players who, upon seeing any kind of enemy push, would immediately drop their Mega Knight, regardless of whether it was actually the right play. Sometimes this worked, the Mega Knight's raw stats and abilities bailing out poor decision-making. But often it didn't, and these panic spawns became opportunities for skilled opponents to punish over-reliance on the card. The evolution of Mega Knight strategies in those early weeks was fascinating to watch. Initially, most players used him purely defensively as a response to enemy pushes. His spawn damage and high health made this the obvious application. But as players experimented, more nuanced approaches emerged. Some discovered that spawning the Mega Knight at the bridge, especially when the opponent was low on elixir, could create enormous pressure. Others found that placing him in the back during double elixir, letting him walk slowly toward the bridge while building supporting troops behind him, could create nearly unstoppable pushes. The synergy discoveries were particularly exciting. Players realized that cards like Battle Ram and Bandit, which could quickly reach the opponent's tower, created dilemmas when paired with the Mega Knight. Deal with the fast threats and the Mega Knight reaches your tower. Deal with the Mega Knight and the fast threats get through. This type of split pressure strategy became a hallmark of early Mega Knight decks. Inferno Dragon emerged as a favorite partner for the Mega Knight during this period. The pairing made perfect sense. The Mega Knight handled swarms and medium health troops that threatened the Inferno Dragon, while the Inferno Dragon melted the tanks and mini-tanks that could duel the Mega Knight effectively. Together, they covered each other's weaknesses beautifully, creating a defensive core that was difficult to overcome. As the first month progressed, the meta began to adapt. Cards that countered the Mega Knight saw their usage rates climb. Inferno Tower became more common, as it could melt the Mega Knight quickly while keeping him at a safe distance. PEKKA decks gained popularity, as P.E.K.K.A. was one of the few cards that could go toe-to-toe with the Mega Knight and win convincingly. Even lower-cost options like Knight and Mini P.E.K.K.A. found renewed relevance as Mega Knight counters. The adaptation wasn't one-sided, though. As counter cards became more common, Mega Knight players adapted their strategies. They learned to support their Mega Knight with Zap or Lightning to reset Inferno Towers. They started carrying air troops to deal with high-damage ground units, trying to solo their Mega Knight. They became more selective about when to play him, recognizing that sometimes holding him as a defensive threat was more valuable than actually using him. This back and forth, this dynamic adaptation and counter-adaptation, is what makes card games like Clash Royale endlessly engaging. The Mega Knight wasn't static in the meta. He was a living presence that changed how players approached deck building, how they managed their elixir, how they thought about offensive and defensive positioning. Even players who didn't use the Mega Knight had to think about him constantly, and that's the mark of a truly meta-defining card. The tournament scene during this period provided interesting data on the Mega Knight's actual power level. While he was extremely popular in ladder play, whereas high rarity meant he was often overleveled relative to opponents' cards, tournament standard play presented a more balanced picture. Win rates in grand challenges and special events showed the Mega Knight was strong, but not dominant. Skilled players were countering him effectively, and decks without him were still winning consistently. This disparity between ladder and tournament performance revealed something important. Much of the frustration with the Mega Knight came from level-dependent interactions. An over-leveled Mega Knight could survive interactions he shouldn't, could destroy troops that should have survived his spawn damage. At equal levels, the card was well balanced. But on ladder, where equal levels were rare, the Mega Knight could feel oppressive. The community's emotional journey with the Mega Knight in those early weeks mirrored the typical arc of any powerful new addition to a game. Initial excitement gave way to frustration as people faced him repeatedly without solid counter strategies. This frustration then gradually transformed into understanding as players, learned his weaknesses, and adapted their decks. Finally, acceptance settled in, a recognition that the Mega Knight was part of the game now, powerful but manageable, requiring respect but not fear. One of the more positive aspects of the community reaction was how it brought players together. Mega Knight discussions crossed clan boundaries, skill levels, regional differences. A new player struggling in Arena 11 could get advice from a professional player on how to counter the Mega Knight, creating connections that might not have formed otherwise. The shared experience of adapting to this new card created a sense of collective journey, of the community moving forward together. The early impact of the Mega Knight also sparked broader conversations about game balance, about what made a legendary card truly legendary, about the role of powerful cards in keeping a game fresh and exciting. Some argued that legendary cards should be game changers, that they should feel special and powerful, and yes, maybe even a little overpowered. Others felt that balance should trump rarity, that every card should be viable, but none should be necessary. Supercell, for their part, remained relatively quiet during this initial period, choosing to let the meta settle naturally rather than making hasty balance changes. This patience proved wise. The meta did settle, counter strategies emerged, and what initially seemed like an overwhelming card revealed itself to be strong but fair. This hands-off approach showed confidence in their design and respect for the community's ability to adapt. The Mega Knight's early impact extended beyond just gameplay. He influenced how new cards were designed and released going forward. Supercell had learned that big, splashy legendary cards generated excitement and engagement, but they also needed clear weaknesses and counterplay. Future releases would be evaluated against the Mega Knight standard, both in terms of power level and in terms of creating that feeling of playing something truly special. As October turned to November and the Mega Knight approached his 2-month mark in the game, something interesting happened. The complaints quieted, the panic subsided, and in their place came appreciation. Players who had initially hated facing the Mega Knight found themselves enjoying using him. Those who had called him broken recognized that he added strategic depth to the game. The Mega Knight had transitioned from controversial new addition to accepted part of the meta, from disruptor to institution. This journey, from release to acceptance, from novelty to normalcy, is the story of every successful addition to a long-running game. The Mega Knight shook the arena when he arrived, absolutely. But the arena absorbed the shock, adjusted, and found a new equilibrium. The community's resilience and adaptability turned what could have been a game-ruining addition into an enriching one. Proof that players and developers together can navigate the always challenging task of adding power to a balanced game. The Balance Chronicles. In the world of live service games, balance is never truly achieved, only approached. It's a moving target, shifting with every new card release, every strategic discovery, every evolution in how players understand and play the game. The Mega Knight's balance history is a testament to this truth, a chronicle of adjustments both large and small, each attempting to keep him powerful and exciting while preventing him from becoming oppressive. The Mega Knight launched in a surprisingly well-balanced state, a testament to Supercell's playtesting and design philosophy. However, no card enters the live environment perfectly tuned. The sheer number of players, the diversity of deck compositions, the creative strategies that emerge from millions of minds working on the same problem. These factors reveal balance issues that no amount of internal testing can predict. The first significant balance change came relatively quickly on October 20th, 2017, just 6 weeks after his release. This update reduced the Mega Knight's spawn and jump damage by a modest 6%. The area damage radius of these abilities was also decreased from 3.5 tiles to 3 tiles. These changes might seem small on paper, but they had meaningful impact on gameplay. The damage reduction meant that certain interactions changed. Some troops that previously died to the spawn damage now survived with a sliver of health. This created more uncertainty in how the Mega Knight would perform, more opportunities for opponents to get value from their troops, even when the Mega Knight landed on them. The radius reduction was perhaps even more significant, making it slightly easier for opponents to spread their troops in ways that minimize the Mega Knight's impact. These changes weren't meant to cripple the Mega Knight, and they didn't. He remained a popular and powerful card. But they did reduce his most frustrating aspects. Those moments where he seemed to destroy everything in an impossibly large radius with damage that felt impossible to survive. The adjustments were surgical, targeting the specific elements that were creating negative player experiences without gutting the card's identity or effectiveness. In December of 2017, just 3 months after his release, another balance pass arrived. This one targeted the Mega Knight's regular attack damage, reducing it by 4.5%. This change was interesting because it didn't affect his signature abilities. The spawn and jump damage remained unchanged. Instead, it reduced his sustained damage output, his ability to take down buildings and tanks through repeated regular attacks. This adjustment made sense in the context of how the Mega Knight was being used. He was intended primarily as a defensive card that could counter-push, not as a tank that you built pushes around. But some players had found success using him as a primary win condition, pairing him with support troops and relying on his combination of health and regular attack damage to overwhelm opponents. The damage reduction didn't eliminate this strategy, but it made it less reliable, encouraging players to use the Mega Knight in the role he was designed for. A longer period of stability followed. Throughout 2018 and into 2019, the Mega Knight received no direct balance changes. This doesn't mean he was ignored. His interactions with other cards changed as those cards received buffs and nerfs, and new card releases created new synergies and counters. But his core statistics remained constant, suggesting that Supercell felt they'd found an acceptable balance point. This period of stability was important for the Mega Knight's place in the meta. Players could invest in upgrading him without fear that he'd be nerfed into irrelevance. Deck strategies could be refined without constantly having to account for changing Mega Knight statistics. The card had time to settle, for the community to truly understand him, for innovative uses to be discovered and countered and rediscovered in endless cycles. In June of 2019, a quality of life change arrived that didn't affect balance but improved gameplay feel. The Mega Knight's walking animation was adjusted to more accurately sync with his actual movement speed. This might seem trivial, but in a game where precise timing and positioning matter enormously, having animations that accurately reflect what's happening mechanically is crucial. The change made the Mega Knight feel better to play and easier to play against, as visual cues more clearly communicated his position and timing. Then, in October of 2019, the Mega Knight received his first buff. His hit speed was increased by 11%, from 1.8 seconds to 1.7 seconds. This seemingly small change had ripple effects throughout his kit. He attacked more frequently, increasing his sustained damage output and making him more threatening over time. More importantly, it made his attack rhythm feel slightly more responsive, reducing those frustrating moments where he'd be just about to attack when a troop moved out of range. This buff suggests that Supercell had gathered enough data to determine the earlier nerfs had been slightly too aggressive, or that the meta had shifted in ways that made the Mega Knight less dominant than intended. Buffs to previously nerfed cards are always interesting because they show a willingness to revisit past decisions, to recognize when the pendulum has swung too far in one direction. The next significant change came in November of 2020, in the context of a major update that saw numerous cards adjusted. The Mega Knight's regular attack damage was increased by 4.5%. This exactly reversed the damage nerf from December 2017, bringing him full circle back to his release damage values for regular attacks. It was as if Supercell was saying, "We tried reducing this, the meta adapted, and now we're comfortable restoring it." These restoration buffs are fascinating from a game design perspective. They demonstrate that balance isn't about finding one perfect state and maintaining it forever. The same statistics that were too powerful in 2017 might be perfectly appropriate in 2020 after the game has evolved. New cards have been released, and players have become more skilled at execution and counterplay. In September of 2021, the Mega Knight received another buff, this time to his hit points. A 4% increase in health might not sound like much, but at the Mega Knight's already substantial health pool, it translated to meaningful increases in survivability. Interactions with various damage sources changed, allowing the Mega Knight to survive longer in situations where he previously would have fallen just short. This health buff addressed one of the persistent issues with the Mega Knight's role as a defensive card. He was meant to stop pushes and then counterpush with remaining health, but too often he'd successfully defend but die in the process, leaving no counterpush potential. The extra health made it more likely he'd have enough remaining to threaten the opponent's tower, fulfilling his intended function more reliably. The balance changes to the Mega Knight weren't just about numbers adjustments. Throughout his history, various bug fixes and interaction adjustments affected how he functioned. Issues with his jump targeting were addressed, ensuring he'd jump at appropriate targets rather than sometimes walking when he should jump. Interactions with knockback and stun effects were refined, creating more consistent and predictable gameplay. One particularly important set of changes involved level scaling interactions. Supercell worked to ensure that the Mega Knight's effectiveness didn't swing too wildly based on level differences. An over-leveled Mega Knight had been particularly oppressive on ladder, destroying troops he shouldn't while surviving against troops that should have killed him. Adjustments to various damage and health breakpoints helped smooth out these level-dependent interactions, making the card more balanced across the entire range of levels. In March of 2023, the landscape shifted dramatically with the introduction of card evolutions. While the base Mega Knight received no changes in this update, the announcement that he would eventually receive an evolution meant that future balance considerations would need to account for two versions of the card. This added complexity to the balance equation, as changes to the base Mega Knight would affect the evolution and vice versa. When the Mega Knight evolution was finally released, it brought its own balance considerations. The uppercut mechanic, launching troops backward toward the opponent's tower with each regular attack, created new interactions and strategies. The evolution was intentionally tuned to be powerful. It was meant to feel like a significant upgrade, but not so powerful that it dominated every match. Balancing evolutions while keeping base cards relevant has been an ongoing challenge for Supercell, and the Mega Knight evolution represents one approach to that challenge. Throughout all these changes, certain principles have guided the Mega Knight's balance journey. First, his identity as a defensive card with counter-push potential has been preserved. No changes have transformed him into something fundamentally different. Second, his skill ceiling has been maintained. He is easy to play at a basic level, but rewards mastery of timing and positioning. Third, his weaknesses have been kept clear and exploitable air troops. High DPS, single-target units, and building pools remain effective counter strategies. The balance history also reveals Supercell's philosophy about legendary cards. They should feel special and powerful, worth the excitement when obtained and worth the investment to upgrade. But they shouldn't be mandatory, shouldn't warp the meta around themselves, shouldn't make other strategies feel invalid. The Mega Knight's journey from slightly overtuned to well-balanced to occasionally underpowered and back to well-balanced shows this philosophy in action. Looking at the complete arc of balance changes, a pattern emerges. The Mega Knight was released slightly too strong, was carefully nerfed to address the most problematic aspects, was left stable for an extended period, and has since received small buffs to keep him relevant as the game evolves around him. This pattern is what healthy balance looks like: responsive, but not reactive, willing to make changes, but not constantly tinkering. respecting both the card's identity and the player's experience. The balance chronicles of the Mega Knight aren't finished, of course. As long as Clash Royale continues as a live game, balance will be an ongoing process. New cards will be released that interact with the Mega Knight in unexpected ways. Strategic innovations will discover overlooked synergies or counter strategies. The meta will shift, ebb and flow like tides, and the Mega Knight's position within it will shift accordingly. But his core identity, carefully crafted through years of thoughtful balance adjustments, will endure. Knight School memories. Every warrior has a beginning, and even the Mega Knight, that imposing figure who descends onto battlefields with the force of 1,000 mustaches, was once something less than legendary. The lore of Clash Royale is often subtle, revealed in card descriptions and flavor text rather than explicit storytelling. But these fragments create a surprisingly rich tapestry when examined closely. The Mega Knight's backstory, centered around Knight School and the mockery he endured, adds depth to a character who could have been merely a collection of stats and abilities. The official description mentions that the Mega Knight crash lands with enough force to make grown wizards cry, and notes that in Knight School, this dude got smack-talked for his small and delicate hands. This single sentence carries surprising emotional weight. Here was someone training to be a knight, a warrior expected to wield weapons and wear armor and project strength, but he possessed a physical characteristic that made him a target for ridicule. Imagine the scene at Knight School. Young warriors in training, all competing for recognition, all trying to prove themselves worthy of their future role. In such an environment, any perceived weakness becomes a vector for mockery. Small hands, delicate hands. These became not just a physical characteristic, but a symbol of inadequacy in the eyes of his peers. The very tools he'd need for his profession, his hands, were deemed insufficient. This bullying, this mockery, would have been relentless. Knight School wasn't likely a gentle place. It was where future warriors were forged through competition, through testing, through constant comparison to one another. Every time he picked up a sword, someone probably made a comment. Every sparring session where his grip wasn't as strong as others became an opportunity for ridicule. The small hand jokes probably never ended, worn into grooves through repetition until they became a background hum of his existence there. But here's where the story becomes interesting, where the Mega Knight's character reveals itself. He didn't give up. He didn't let the mockery break him or drive him away. Instead, he found a solution, and that solution was brilliant in its directness. If his hands were too small to effectively wield traditional weapons, then he'd create weapons that attached to his armor, that used his whole body's strength rather than just his grip. Those massive spiked maces that define his appearance aren't just weapons. They're a response to limitation, a creative solution to a problem that others used to demean him. The armor itself tells a story too. That heavy, dark plate isn't standard knight issue. It's specialized, custom, designed to support those mace fists and to transform their wearer into something far more than an ordinary knight. Someone who felt inadequate because of small hands chose to encase himself in armor so impressive, so intimidating, that the hands within became irrelevant. The Mega Knight isn't hiding his perceived weakness. He's made it irrelevant through sheer overwhelming presence. There's something deeply human in this transformation narrative, even though the Mega Knight himself is a character in a mobile game. How many people have taken something they were mocked for and turned it into motivation? How many have responded to, "You can't because of X," with creative solutions that make X irrelevant? The Mega Knight's story is, at its core, about refusing to accept limitations that others try to impose on you. The jump attack, that signature ability that makes the Mega Knight so distinctive, can be read through this lens too. Traditional knights in Clash Royale walk steadily forward, plant their feet, and swing their weapons. But the Mega Knight leaps, defying expectations of how someone in heavy armor should move. It's as if he's saying, You thought I couldn't be a proper knight? I'll redefine what a knight is. His whole fighting style is a rejection of traditional forms, a creation of something new that works for him specifically. The name itself, Mega Knight, suggests transcendence of the normal category. He's not just a knight, not even just a super knight. He's mega, beyond, larger than the role itself. This naming could be seen as overcompensation, but it could also be seen as earned. He didn't fit the mold of what knights were supposed to be, so he broke the mold and created his own category. Consider the psychological journey required for this transformation. From mocked student to legendary warrior is a path that requires not just physical training, but mental fortitude. Every time doubt crept in, every time those old voices from night school echoed in memory saying his hands were too small, too delicate, he had to push past them. He had to believe that he could be more than what his critics said he was, more than what his apparent limitations suggested. The story also says something about the culture of night school and warrior training in the Clash universe. That such mockery was apparently common. That physical characteristics became grounds for exclusion or ridicule suggests a harsh environment. But it also suggests that this environment, for all its cruelty, produced warriors who were driven, who were forced to overcome, who emerged stronger for having faced adversity. The Mega Knight is proof of this. He wouldn't be who he is without that crucible of mockery. There's an interesting parallel between the Mega Knight's story and broader themes in Clash Royale. The game itself is about taking seemingly mismatched troops and creating synergies, about finding unexpected solutions to tactical problems, about creativity within constraints. The Mega Knight embodies these themes in his very backstory. He took a constraint, small hands, and created an innovative solution, mace fists integrated into armor. That made him not just viable, but extraordinary. The other students at night school, the ones who mocked him, where are they now? Presumably, they graduated and became regular knights, competent perhaps, but unremarkable. Meanwhile, the one they belittled became a legend, a legendary card that players across the world desire and fear. There's a poetic justice in that, a validation that being different, being subject to mockery, doesn't determine your ultimate value or potential. This backstory also makes the Mega Knight more relatable to players. Many people, perhaps most, have experienced some form of being told they're not good enough for something they want to do. Maybe it was a physical characteristic, maybe a skill deficit, maybe just being in the wrong place or knowing the wrong people. The Mega Knight's journey from inadequate to extraordinary resonates because it reflects struggles that transcend the game, that touch on universal human experiences of overcoming adversity. The fact that this rich backstory is conveyed in just a few words of flavor text shows Supercell's skill at world building. They didn't need to create an elaborate cutscene or write a novel. A single sentence about night school mockery is enough to spark imagination, to create depth, to transform a game piece into a character with history and motivation. It's efficient storytelling that respects players' intelligence and imagination. The Mega Knight's memories of night school, of being mocked, of feeling inadequate, these aren't shown directly in the game, but they inform everything about how we understand the character. They explain the armor's imposing nature, the oversized weapons, the aggressive abilities. They give context to the confidence he projects, that swagger of someone who has proven everyone wrong and knows it. Every time he lands on the battlefield with that characteristic force, he's making a statement. You were wrong about me. You've always been wrong about me. And here's the proof. Those memories also suggest that the Mega Knight fights not just for tactical victory, but for something more personal. Every battle is a continuation of that original struggle at night school. Every successful defense, every devastating spawn damage that obliterates enemy troops, every jump attack that crushes opponents. These are all echoes of "I told you I could do it." The battlefield becomes a place of continual validation. The psychology of power, There's something uniquely psychological about the Mega Knight that goes beyond his statistics and mechanics. When players see that dark armor descending onto their side of the arena, there's a visceral response that no spreadsheet can capture. Fear, respect, sometimes panic. Understanding why the Mega Knight generates these emotional reactions helps us appreciate not just his power, but his place in the mental game that every Clash Royale match truly is. The psychology begins before the Mega Knight even lands. The moment he appears above the battlefield, dropping toward his target position, there's anticipation. Both players know what's coming. The defender knows their carefully assembled push is about to be tested. The attacker knows they're about to see if they spent their 7 elixir wisely. That split second between appearance and impact is loaded with tension, pregnant with possibility. Then comes the impact itself, and this is where the psychological warfare really begins. The spawn damage and knockback don't just destroy troops and scatter formations. They shatter plans. A player might have spent 15 elixir building a push, carefully placing each troop to support the others, timing their advancement to overwhelm the opponent. Then 7 elixir worth of Mega Knight lands in the middle of it all, and suddenly half those troops are gone, the rest are scattered, and the entire strategy has collapsed. This feeling of having your plans demolished in an instant creates a specific type of frustration. It's not just about losing troops or taking damage. It's about the invalidation of effort and thought. Players invest mental energy into building pushes, thinking about placement and timing and synergies. The Mega Knight can make all that mental investment feel wasted with a single deployment. And that's psychologically painful in a way that losing to superior strategy or execution isn't. But there's also the flip side of this psychological dynamic. For the player using the Mega Knight, successfully shutting down a big push with perfect timing creates a rush of satisfaction that's hard to match. It's not just about making a good play. It's about timing, about reading your opponent's intentions, about that perfect moment where everything clicks and your prediction pays off. That dopamine hit from a well-timed Mega Knight spawn is real and powerful, reinforcing the behavior and making players want to recreate that moment again and again. The jump attack adds another layer to the psychological game. Opponents know it's coming, but the exact timing creates uncertainty. Will he jump now? Do I place something closer to distract him, or will that just waste elixir? Should I let him jump and counter afterward, or try to prevent it? These questions run through defenders' minds every time a Mega Knight is advancing, creating decision paralysis that can lead to mistakes or missed opportunities. There's also an element of inevitability to the Mega Knight that affects player psychology. Once he's spawned and healthy, he feels unstoppable. He's walking toward your tower, and you know you have to deal with him. But he has so much health that partial solutions don't feel sufficient. It's not enough to chip at him or slow him down. You need to fully commit resources to stopping him, and that commitment can leave you vulnerable to other threats. This creates a damned if you do, damn dash if dash you dashed on single quotes T feeling that generates stress and forces uncomfortable decisions. The overleveling phenomenon amplifies all these psychological effects. On ladder, where card levels vary, facing an overleveled Mega Knight can feel completely hopeless. Your usual counters don't work, quite right, because the level difference means he survives when he should die, or kills your troops when they should survive. This creates learned helplessness, a psychological state where players stop trying optimal strategies because their experience has taught them nothing works. They panic spawn counters, make desperate plays, and often lose not because the Mega Knight is actually unbeatable, but because they've convinced themselves he is. The meta-perception of the Mega Knight also plays into his psychological impact. Cards that are perceived as overpowered or no skill carry a stigma that affects how encounters with them feel. Players who believe the Mega Knight is a crutch for bad players will feel extra frustrated when losing to him. not just because they lost, but because they feel they lost to something unfair. Conversely, this stigma can make some Mega Knight users defensive about their deck choices, creating a psychological burden where they feel they have to justify or prove their skill despite using a cheap card. There is an interesting phenomenon where the Mega Knight's presence in the meta affects deck building, even for players who do not own or use him. Knowing that Mega Knight is common means including answers for him, which shapes deck composition. But those answers might be suboptimal against other strategies, creating a tax on deck building diversity. Players feel this constraint psychologically, even if they can't articulate it. The Mega Knight influences their choices before the match even begins, exercising psychological control over the meta through his mere existence. The sound design contributes significantly to the psychological impact. That deep thud when he lands, the metallic crunch of his attacks, the distinctive audio cues that announce his presence even if you're not looking directly at him. These sounds trigger immediate recognition and response in experienced players. Over time, they can even develop a Pavlovian response where hearing the Mega Knight S sounds creates a stress reaction before they've consciously processed what is happening. From a game design perspective, the psychological impact of the Mega Knight is both a feature and a challenge. He's meant to feel powerful, to create memorable moments, to be exciting to play and challenging to face. But if the psychological response tips too far into frustration or hopelessness, that's a problem. Supercell has had to walk this tightrope with balance changes, trying to maintain the Mega Knight S identity and impact while ensuring he doesn't create so much negative emotion that players stop enjoying the game. The psychology of power in gaming often relates to agency, the feeling that you have control over outcomes and that skill matters. The Mega Knight challenges agency in specific ways. His spawn damage can feel unavoidable, like you couldn't have done anything differently. His jump attack can feel random, like whether you win or lose depends on targeting decisions you can't fully control. These situations where outcomes feel predetermined or out of your hands are psychologically uncomfortable, creating frustration even when the actual balance might be fair. But experienced players develop a different psychological relationship with the Mega Knight. They learn to predict when opponents are likely to have him in cycle. They position troops anticipating his deployment. They manage Elixir specifically to maintain answers. For these players, the Mega Knight becomes less an overwhelming force and more a puzzle to solve, a known quantity that adds complexity without adding stress. This transition from fear to understanding is part of the skill development journey in Clash Royale, and the Mega Knight serves as a significant milestone in that journey. The card also creates interesting psychological dynamics in terms of commitment and investment. Playing the Mega Knight is a 7 elixir commitment, a significant portion of your total elixir at any given time. This creates psychological pressure to make the play count, to get value from that investment. Players might hold the Mega Knight too long, waiting for the perfect opportunity that never comes, or play him desperately, trying to force value when the situation isn't right. This decision fatigue around when to commit such a costly card adds mental load to matches in ways that cheaper cards don't. There's also the trophy pressure's psychological effect. At certain trophy ranges, Mega Knight becomes extremely common, and players know this. Climbing ladder means facing him repeatedly, sometimes multiple matches in a row. This repetition can create a grinding, exhausting feeling where even when you win, you're dreading facing him again next match. The psychological fatigue from repetitive challenging situations is real and can contribute to burnout or frustration with the game. The meme culture around the Mega Knight also influences psychology in interesting ways. Players who identify with the jokes about Mega Knight users being brain dead or relying on a crutch card might avoid using him even when it would be strategically optimal because they've internalized the social stigma. Others might use him specifically because of the memes, leaning into the persona of the annoying Mega Knight player. These social psychological factors shape behavior in ways that pure gameplay considerations don't. Understanding the psychology of power that the Mega Knight represents helps us see why he's such a controversial and discussed card. He's not just strong in a mathematical sense. He's psychologically impactful in ways that affect how players experience matches, make decisions, and feel about the game. This psychological dimension is what makes the Mega Knight more than just another card. He's a test of mental fortitude, a trigger for emotional responses, and a force that shapes player behavior through fear, respect, and the complex interplay of commitment, agency, and learned patterns that define high-level Clash Royale play. Tactical mastery. Offensive strategies. Using the Mega Knight offensively is an art form that extends far beyond simply dropping him at the bridge and hoping for the best. While he's primarily known as a defensive card, understanding his offensive potential and the nuances of aggressive Mega Knight play separates competent players from true masters of the card. Let's explore the depth of offensive strategy that the Mega Knight enables. The most straightforward offensive use is the bridge spam. When your opponent is low on elixir, dropping the Mega Knight directly at the bridge creates immediate pressure that's difficult to answer efficiently. The opponent needs to spend at least as much elixir as you did to stop him, and often more, especially if they're caught with the wrong cards in hand. This play is most effective after you've successfully defended and forced your opponent to spend elixir, creating a window where they can't afford an optimal response. But the timing of bridge spam matters immensely. Drop him too early, and your opponent has time to generate elixir and cycle to their counters. Drop him too late, and you've missed the window where they're truly vulnerable. Reading your opponent's elixir count, tracking what cards they've played, understanding their cycle, all of this informs when the bridge spam becomes a powerful play versus when it is a desperate gamble. The back placement strategy represents a more methodical approach to offensive play. Placing the Mega Knight in the back corner of your side gives maximum time to build support troops behind him before he reaches the river. This creates what's called a beatdown push, where the Mega Knight serves as both tank and damage dealer, with support troops providing additional damage, splash protection, or utility. What makes this strategy effective is how it forces your opponent into difficult decisions. If they rush the opposite lane, trying to race your slow-building push, you have time to defend and still support your Mega Knight. If they wait and try to defend your push at the river, you have maximum elixir to support him. If they try to pressure both lanes, they're splitting their resources and likely can't fully handle either threat. The Mega Knight's health pool and area damage make him effective at both attacking and, if needed, abandoning the push to defend emergency situations. Support troop selection for offensive Mega Knight pushes reveal strategic depth. Fast troops like Bandit or Battle Ram create a two-speed push where opponents must choose which threat to prioritize. If they focus on the fast troops, the Mega Knight gets a free approach. If they focus on the Mega Knight, the fast troops might get through. This split pressure approach exploits the fundamental problem in tower defense games. You can't be strong everywhere simultaneously. Flying support troops behind the Mega Knight solve his air weakness while adding extra damage. Minions, Mega Minion, Inferno Dragon, these troops turn the Mega Knight from a ground specialist into a more complete threat. The opponent now needs splash for swarms, high DPS for the Mega Knight, and air targeting for your support. Finding a defensive solution that handles all three becomes significantly more difficult than stopping the Mega Knight alone. Spell support for offensive Mega Knight pushes is crucial at high levels of play. Lightning or Fireball can preemptively eliminate high DPS defenders like Inferno Tower or Mini P.E.K.K.A., clearing the path for your Mega Knight to reach the tower. Zap can reset Inferno effects or stun groups of defending troops, buying precious seconds for your Mega Knight to do his work. The elixir investment is substantial: 7 for Mega Knight, 6 for Lightning, for example. But if it takes a tower or forces a massive defensive commitment, the value is there. The cycle consideration for offensive play is often overlooked by newer players. If you're planning an offensive Mega Knight push, you want it to be the evolved version if you're running the evolution. This means tracking your cycles carefully, ensuring that when you're ready to push, you'll get the upgraded version with the uppercut ability. Poor cycle management can result in spending elixir on an offensive push, only to realize too late that you've deployed the base version when you needed the evolution. Punishing overcommitment is another offensive application of the Mega Knight that requires reading your opponent. When they invest heavily in one lane, say, placing a golem in the back and beginning to build a massive push, the Mega Knight at the opposite bridge creates a problem they're well positioned to handle. They've committed elixir to their push and may not have efficient answers available. This opposite lane pressure can force them to abandon their push to defend, effectively wasting their investment. The surprise factor can't be underestimated in offensive Mega Knight play. Players often expect and prepare for defensive Mega Knight usage. When you use him offensively, especially early in a match before you've revealed him, the surprise can create panic and suboptimal responses. This is particularly true in the first minute, when some players are still developing their elixir advantage and figuring out their opponent's deck archetype. Double elixir time transforms offensive Mega Knight strategy significantly. With elixir generating twice as fast, the cost of the Mega Knight becomes less prohibitive, and you can more easily support him with multiple troops and spells. The standard late-game strategy often involves spawning the Mega Knight in one lane while having enough elixir to defend the other, or even spawning multiple Mega Knights in succession, overwhelming opponents with the sheer sustained pressure of multiple 7 elixir threats that each require substantial resources to stop. The counter-push after a successful defense is perhaps the most common and most effective offensive application. Your Mega Knight successfully defends against a push and survives with significant health remaining. Now he's already across the river, already threatening the opponent's tower, and they're likely low on elixir, having just invested in their failed push. Adding even cheap support troops behind him turns the successful defense into a threatening offense with minimal additional investment. Baiting out counters is an advanced offensive technique. If you know your opponent has Inferno Tower or P.E.K.K.A., hard counters to your Mega Knight forcing them to use these cards on other threats creates windows where your Mega Knight can be deployed offensively without facing his natural predators. This requires deck composition that includes other tanks or threats that force out the same counters, creating mind games about which threat your opponent needs to use their counter on. The split lane pressure using Mega Knight requires precise timing and elixir management. Place him in one lane while simultaneously deploying threats in the other goblin barrel. Minor, fast troops forcing your opponent to defend both sides. The Mega Knight's presence means they can't just ignore one side while fully committing to the other. Even if neither push fully succeeds, the tower damage accumulated from both lanes can add up to taking towers or creating crown tower health disadvantages that matter in close matches. Understanding tower health breakpoints for offensive decision-making separates good from great players. If an opponent's crown tower is low enough that your Mega Knight can take it even through imperfect defense, the offensive spawn becomes less risky. You might accept trading towers, or even losing the match if you can secure the crown tower you retargeting. This requires quick math and strategic thinking to recognize when going all in offensively is correct, even if it means giving up defensive advantages. The evolved Mega Knight's uppercut ability completely changes offensive calculus. The 4-tile knockback that triggers his jump attack means single defenders get locked in a cycle of being pushed back and jumped on, unable to effectively damage the Mega Knight. This makes the evolution version significantly more threatening offensively, capable of pushing through defenses that would stop the base version. Understanding when you have access to the evolution versus the base card dramatically changes offensive strategy. Offensive Mega Knight play in combination with win conditions creates layered attacks that are difficult to defend. If your actual win condition is Hog Rider, deploying the Mega Knight in the opposite lane turns him into a secondary threat that demands attention. Even if the opponent successfully defends both, the elixir expenditure and stress of defending two lanes simultaneously creates advantages in later cycles. The Mega Knight becomes a tool to enable your true win condition, rather than being the win condition himself. Recognizing when not to use the Mega Knight offensively is perhaps as important as knowing when to use him. If your opponent has full elixir, has hard counters in hand, and hasn't shown any vulnerabilities, offensive Mega Knight play is likely to result in getting little value for your significant investment. Learning patience, holding the card for better opportunities, managing the temptation to do something when you re-behind. These discipline elements separate players who use the Mega Knight well from those who waste him. The offensive mastery of the Mega Knight isn't about one dominant strategy, but about having a toolkit of approaches and the game sense to know which applies in each situation. It's understanding matchups, tracking cycles, reading elixir states, predicting responses, and executing with timing that maximizes value. The Mega Knight's versatility means he can be deployed offensively in myriad ways, and truly skilled players move fluidly between these approaches, keeping opponents guessing and exploiting whatever weakness presents itself. The art of defense with Mega Knight. While offensive applications showcase the Mega Knight's versatility, his defensive capabilities are where he truly shines and where his design intent is most apparent. Using the Mega Knight defensively is a nuanced skill that involves prediction, placement precision, and understanding the complex web of interactions between cards. Let's explore the defensive artistry that the Mega Knight enables. The perfect defensive spawn is more prediction than reaction. By the time you see your opponent's push fully developed and crossing the river, it's often too late to get maximum value from your Mega Knight. The art lies in reading your opponents as pattern, seeing them place a tank in the back or begin grouping troops, and anticipating where their push will be and what composition it will have when it reaches the river. Spawning your Mega Knight at that predicted point creates the ideal situation. His spawn damage hits multiple high-value targets simultaneously. His knockback scatters the formation, and he's positioned to clean up survivors. Placement precision matters enormously for defensive spawns. One tile difference in where you place him can mean the difference between hitting 3 support troops and missing all of them. The spawn damage radius is 3 tiles, substantial, but not unlimited. Understanding this radius intuitively, being able to visualize it without overlays or guides, being able to place the Mega Knight in that perfect spot, even in the chaos of battle. This is a skill that comes with practice, but massively impacts defensive effectiveness. Against beat-down deck strategies built around large tanks like Golem, Lava Hound, or Giant, the Mega Knight serves a specific defensive role. He's placed not on the tank itself, which his spawn damage won't significantly harm, but on the support troops clustered behind the tank. Night Witch, Baby Dragon, Lightning Dragon, Electro Dragon, whatever splash or high DPS units are supporting the tank, these are the Mega Knight's targets. Eliminating or severely damaging these support troops with spawn damage turns a terrifying push into a lone tank that your Princess Towers can handle. The defensive timing against fast pressure decks requires different considerations. Against Hog Rider, Ram Rider, or Royal Hogs, you're not dealing with a slow building push you can predict. Instead, you need to react quickly to sudden bridge pressure. The Mega Knight can handle these threats, but placement becomes crucial. Too close to the tower, and you might miss with spawn damage. Too far forward, and the threat gets hits on your tower before you can stop it. The optimal placement is usually just at the river, letting the Mega Knight as spawn damage, and then his regular attacks stop the threat before it reaches the tower. Against spam decks, strategies that flood the arena with numerous cheap troops, the Mega Knight is uniquely valuable. His area damage, both from spawn and regular attacks, excels at clearing swarms. Skeleton army, goblin gang, spear goblins, fire spirit groups, all of these popular spam elements die instantly or nearly instantly to the Mega Knight. The psychological deterrent is real too. Opponents running spam strategies have to think twice about their deployments, knowing a Mega Knight might land in the middle of their push. The kiting technique with Mega Knight. Defense is an advanced skill that turns his jump attack from a simple mechanic into a strategic tool. By placing troops at specific positions, you can control where the Mega Knight jumps, essentially choosing his path through the battlefield. This allows you to position him to intercept threats, to cluster enemies for maximum spawn damage value, or to set up situations where his jump will hit exactly what you want it to hit. Mastering this technique requires understanding the 3.5 to 5 tile jump, trigger range, and being able to use it predictively rather than reactively. Combo defending with other cards amplifies the Mega Knight's defensive value. Pairing him with Tornado, for example, creates a devastating combination where you can pull scattered enemy troops together just as the Mega Knight lands, ensuring spawn damage hits everything. Combining him with splash damage dealers like Wizard or Executioner means even if something survives his spawn, it's immediately hit by additional area damage. These combinations often completely annihilate pushes that would otherwise threaten towers, creating massive positive elixir trades. Against air-heavy strategies, the Mega Knight's fundamental limitation, inability to target air units, becomes a critical consideration. But this doesn't make him useless in these matchups. Against Lava Hound, for instance, he can touch the Hound itself, but destroys the pups when they spawn and eliminates ground support troops. Against Balloon, he needs air targeting support, but his presence means the opponent's ground troops can't support the Balloon. Understanding his limitations and building your deck to cover them is part of the defensive art. The counter-push potential after successful defense is what elevates the Mega Knight from a good defensive card to excellent one. Because he has substantial health, successful defenses often leave him alive with enough HP to threaten the opponent's tower. This creates what's called defense into offense, where a single card serves both roles sequentially. The 7 elixir investment feels less costly when you realize you're regetting both defensive stop and offensive pressure from the same deployment. This is a key reason why the Mega Knight, despite his high cost, sees play in so many deck archetypes. Defending split lane pushes with the Mega Knight requires quick decision-making. When opponents push both lanes simultaneously, you need to identify which lane the Mega Knight can best impact and which needs your other defensive tools. Generally, the Mega Knight goes to whichever lane has the most concentrated troop grouping, whereas spawn damage will provide maximum value. The other lane needs to be handled with cheaper cards or troops that are more efficient in different scenarios. This split-second decision-making under pressure is where defensive mastery truly shows. The defensive cycle management means tracking not just when you have the Mega Knight available, but when your opponent is likely to push. If you just use your Mega Knight offensively and your opponent has been patiently building Elixir, they might push knowing you don't have your best defensive tool ready. Conversely, holding the Mega Knight defensively when your opponent is low on Elixir and not threatening might be wasting opportunities. Balancing defensive preparedness with offensive opportunities is a constant tension in Mega Knight gameplay. Against swarm cards plus tanks combinations like Golem plus Skeleton Army or Giant plus Goblin Gand, the Mega Knight shined uniquely. He can be placed to hit the swarm with spawn damage while using his area damage attacks to handle any survivors and the tank simultaneously. This turns what might require multiple cards and careful sequencing from other decks into a single 7 Elixir answer. The efficiency of this interaction is a primary reason why Mega Knight is popular against certain archetypes. Defending chip damage strategies requires a different Mega Knight approach. Against Miner, Goblin Barrel, or Wall Breakers, the Mega Knight is likely too expensive and too slow to be your primary answer. But he provides value by creating situations where opponents can't build supporting pushes for their chip damage. A Mega Knight lurking defensively means they can safely commit troops to support their Miner or create diversions for their barrel. The threat of his defensive presence shapes their behavior even when he's not actively deployed. The late-game defensive stance with Mega Knight involves managing the evolving card rotation and Elixir generation. In double or triple Elixir, defensive Mega Knight usage becomes more forgiving. You can afford to use him suboptimally and still have Elixir to correct or support. But this also means opponents can afford to bait him out and then push again quickly. The mind games intensify. Is this push the real threat or a feint to make you waste your Mega Knight? Reading opponent patterns and tendencies becomes crucial. Against Elixir Golem specifically, the Mega Knight presents an interesting case. The Elixir Golem gives your opponent Elixir when destroyed, which normally makes killing it quickly a double-edged sword. But the Mega Knight has ability to simultaneously destroy the Elixir Golem and all support troops with spawn damage, then counterpush before the opponent can fully utilize the gifted Elixir, turns this interaction favorable. It's one of the premier Elixir Golem counters, demonstrating how specific interactions can elevate a card's value in certain matchups. Defending siege buildings like X-Bow or Mortar with the Mega Knight is less about directly killing the building, though he can, and more about eliminating troops defending the siege weapon. An X-Bow protected by Tesla and troops is difficult to handle, but a Mega Knight landing on the protecting troops, scattering them with spawn damage and knockback, then either destroying the X-Bow or surviving long enough for your tower to do so, turns the tide. The key is recognizing when to target defenders versus the building itself. The psychological dimension of defensive Mega Knight presence affects opponent behavior in measurable ways. Players who know you have Mega Knight in hand or cycle will often play more conservatively, spreading troops rather than grouping them, holding back on committing to large pushes. This psychological pressure creates space and opportunities even when the Mega Knight isn't deployed. Your opponent is playing around him, making suboptimal moves to avoid giving you perfect Mega Knight value, and that's a form of value in itself. Defensive mastery with the Mega Knight ultimately comes down to making the most of every deployment. 7 elixir is a significant investment, and getting maximum value destroying multiple troops, protecting your tower. Setting up a counterpush from each spawn separates players who merely use the Mega Knight from those who master him. It's a combination of prediction, positioning, timing, and understanding the countless interactions that determine whether a defensive Mega Knight spawn completely shuts down a push or merely delays the inevitable. The art lies in consistently achieving the former while avoiding the latter, and that requires practice, gain knowledge, and the kind of intuitive understanding that only comes from hundreds of matches of experience. Countering the unstoppable. Every powerful card has weaknesses, and the Mega Knight, for all his imposing presence and devastating abilities, is no exception. Understanding how to counter him effectively is crucial for any Clash Royale player, whether you're facing him on ladder or in tournaments. Let's explore the full spectrum of counter strategies, from simple card interactions to complex positional plays and psychological approaches. The most direct counters are high DPS, single-target troops that can duel the Mega Knight effectively. P.E.K.K.A. is the premier example, possessing enough health to survive his spawn damage and attacks while dealing massive damage in return. When P.E.K.K.A. is placed to intercept the Mega Knight, the interaction is decisively in P.E.K.K.A.'s favor. She destroys him while retaining most of her health, creating a massive positive elixir trade and potentially a devastating counterpush. Mini P.E.K.K.A. functions similarly, though with less health, making positioning more critical. Place her too close to your tower, and the Mega Knight's spawn damage might hit the tower. Place her too far forward, and support troops with the Mega Knight might eliminate her before she can do her work. Inferno Tower and Inferno Dragon represent the percentage damage counters that excel against high health troops. The Inferno Tower's advantage is its safe distance. The Mega Knight can't easily reach it, and it melts him with its ramping damage. Proper Inferno Tower placement, typically in the center of your side, pulling the Mega Knight away from your tower, neutralizes him almost completely. The Inferno Dragon is more fragile but mobile, able to follow the Mega Knight and continue damaging him even if he jumps. Both Inferno options share a weakness. They can be reset by Zap or Lightning, spells commonly paired with Mega Knight. Anticipating this and having backup plans is essential. Building placements offer a low-cost counter strategy that's all about positioning rather than direct combat. Tesla, Cannon, Goblin Cage, these structures can pull the Mega Knight into the center of your territory, away from your towers, where both Princess Towers can attack him while he slowly destroys the building. This kiting wastes his jump attacks, minimizes tower damage, and often leaves him severely weakened or dead by the time he finishes the building. The key is placement. 4 tiles from the river, 3 tiles from your tower, centered between your towers. This specific positioning, called the center plant, maximizes tower damage on him while minimizing his damage to you. Knight, despite being only 3 elixir, can effectively counter the Mega Knight in certain situations. He has enough health to survive spawn damage and can then trade with the Mega Knight, especially if supported by your tower. This represents a massive positive elixir trade, 3 elixir countering 7, but it requires perfect timing and positioning. If the Mega Knight is supported or has too much health, Knight alone won't suffice. But as part of the defense or when the Mega Knight is weakened from previous engagements, Knight becomes an incredibly efficient answer. Air troops represent an entire category of counters that exploit the Mega Knight as fundamental inability to target air. Minion Horde, if unzapped, destroys the Mega Knight in seconds. Even single air units like Mega Minion or Inferno Dragon, while slower, can eliminate him without taking damage since he can't fight back. The catch is that Mega Knight decks usually include air counters precisely because of this weakness. Arrows, Zap, Fireball, Wizard, Executioner. These splash damage tools kill or severely weaken flying troops. The counter strategy becomes a mind game. Do you play your air counter immediately, risking the spell? or wait to see if they use their spell defensively first. Swarm tactics can overwhelm the Mega Knight despite his area damage if executed cleverly. Skeleton army placed after his spawn damage. Goblin gang split between lanes. Minion horde from air, while skeletons distract on ground. These combined swarm approaches divide his attention and his area damage. No single card overwhelms him, but forcing him to deal with multiple small threats from multiple directions stretches his capabilities. This strategy is elixir efficient when done correctly, but requires precise timing. Swarms placed too early die to spawn damage. Placed too late, and the Mega Knight might already be attacking your tower. The evolved barbarians present an interesting counter case. Their increased stats make them survivable against Mega Knight spawn damage, and their damage output when surrounding him is substantial. They represent a 5-for-7 elixir trade that typically favors the defender, especially when tower damage is considered. The barbarian's primary weakness against Mega Knight is his jump attack, which can scatter them and prevent them from surrounding him properly. Placement becomes crucial, dropping them around him after spawn damage, preventing the jump through positioning, or accepting some will die while others deal damage. Fisherman offers a unique counter mechanic through his hook. He can pull the Mega Knight away from threats, reposition him into tower range, or even pull him across the river if timed during his jump. This creates situations where the Mega Knight's positioning works against him, whereas 7 elixir investment results in minimal value because he's been manipulated into useless locations. Fisherman requires high skill to use effectively, but in practiced hands, he can completely neutralize Mega Knight threats while costing only 3 elixir. The Hunter is an underutilized but effective Mega Knight counter. His close-range damage output is enormous, and he survives spawn damage with enough health to fight back effectively. Placement matters. Too far, and his spread damage is weak. Too close, and he takes tower damage from splash. The optimal distance is just far enough that Mega Knight's spawn damage hits Hunter, but not your tower, allowing Hunter to pour his close-range shotgun blast into the Mega Knight, while your tower adds damage. Support with a cheap tank like Ice Golem or Skeletons and Hunter becomes surprisingly effective. Electro Wizard provides utility beyond just damage through his spawn zap and attack stun. Placed on a Mega Knight, he immediately resets his jump if timed correctly and continually stuns him, slowing his attack speed. Ewiz alone won't kill a healthy Mega Knight, but he buys time and reduces damage output, allowing your towers and other troops to finish the job. The 4 elixir for 7 trade is favorable, especially considering Electro Wizard's utility remains after the Mega Knight is dealt with. Mega Knight versus Mega Knight interactions become common at higher trophy ranges where card ownership overlaps. When both players have Mega Knight, the interaction is about support troops and placement timing more than the Mega Knights themselves. Spawning your Mega Knight on theirs creates dual spawn damage that often neutralizes both or leaves both weakened. The player with better support or whose Mega Knight spawns second, thus getting the last hit of spawn damage, usually wins. This mirror match is all about reading when your opponent will deploy and being prepared to counterspawn. Legendary deck archetypes. The Mega Knight's versatility has led to his inclusion in numerous deck archetypes throughout Clash Royale's history. Understanding these deck types, how they utilize the Mega Knight, and their strategic approaches provides insight into why this card has remained relevant across so many metas and player preferences. Bridge spam decks were among the first to truly showcase the Mega Knight's potential beyond simple defensive play. These aggressive decks pair the Mega Knight with fast pressure cards like Bandit, Battle Ram, and Ram Rider. The strategy revolves around applying constant pressure, forcing opponents to respond to multiple threats simultaneously. The Mega Knight serves dual roles. When defending, his spawn damage and splash attacks stop enemy pushes efficiently, and when pushing, he provides a tanky presence that supports your fast troops or becomes a formidable counter-push threat himself after successful defenses. Beatdown Mega Knight decks take a different approach, treating him more like a secondary tank in slower, more methodical pushes. These decks might pair Mega Knight with Golem or Giant, building massive pushes with layered threats that overwhelm defenders through sheer sustained pressure. The Mega Knight in these builds often starts defensively, stopping enemy pushes, then joins your main beatdown tank for the counter push, creating a two-tank assault that's incredibly difficult to stop. Cycle Mega Knight decks seem contradictory. How can you cycle quickly with a 7 elixir card? But they work by including numerous cheap cards alongside the Mega Knight. Ice Spirit, Skeletons, Fire Spirit, Bats, maybe Spear Goblins or Arrows. These ultra-cheap cards allow you to cycle back to your Mega Knight quickly, meaning you can have him available frequently despite his cost. The strategy emphasizes efficient defense with cheap cards supplemented by the Mega Knight's defensive power, then capitalizing on elixir advantages with well-timed pushes. The bait decks incorporating Mega Knight use him as both bait and payoff. These decks include multiple cards that bait out the same counter, then capitalize when that counter is unavailable. For instance, if your deck includes Mega Knight, Goblin Barrel, and Skeleton Army, opponents must choose what to use their small spell on. Zap the barrel? Then Skeleton Army threatens. Zap the Skeleton Army? Barrel gets damage. Meanwhile, Mega Knight provides a substantial threat that demands different answers, stretching opponent resources across multiple threat categories. Control Mega Knight decks focus on efficiency and attrition. These decks aim to trade favorably on defense repeatedly, slowly building elixir and crown tower health advantages that eventually become insurmountable. Mega Knight is perfect for control because his defensive value is enormous. He can turn 7 elixir into 15 elixir of defensive value with a perfect spawn, and his counter push potential means you're not just defending, you're threatening simultaneously. Control decks might include Mega Knight, Miner, Poison, Inferno Dragon, Bats, Ice Spirit, Log, and Fireball. Every card serves defensive purposes, while also providing chip or pressure capabilities. Mega Knight Balloon pairs area control with direct tower threat. The balloon targets buildings only, meaning it ignores troops and goes straight for towers if undefended. Mega Knight handles ground defenders, while Balloon flies overhead toward the tower. The combination forces opponents to defend both ground and air simultaneously, and many decks struggle with this split attention requirement. Throw in spells to eliminate air defenders, and this deck can take towers surprisingly quickly, despite its seeming lack of direct synergy. Mega Knight Sparky represents maximum spectacle in deck building. Both cards are expensive, both create dramatic moments, both have clear weaknesses. But when they work together, Mega Knight handling swarms and small troops that threaten Sparky, Sparky one-shotting tanks and mini-tanks that trouble Mega Knight, the combination can be devastating. The psychological impact of facing both simultaneously shouldn't be underestimated. Opponents often make mistakes when confronted with multiple high-impact threats. Understanding these archetypes helps players realize that the Mega Knight isn't just a card you drop randomly. He's a strategic piece that functions differently in different deck contexts. In bridge spam, he's aggressive support and defensive reset. In beatdown, he's a secondary tank and defensive anchor. In control, he's efficient defense that enables your win condition. In bait, he's both bait and threat. Each archetype demands different playstyles, different timing, different decision-making patterns. Mastering the Mega Knight means understanding not just the card in isolation, but how he functions within these larger strategic frameworks that define competitive Clash Royale play. The evolution arrives. Boxing champion on September 14th, 2024. The Mega Knight received something unprecedented in Clash Royale's history. He became the first legendary card to receive an evolution. This wasn't just a stat buff or a cosmetic change. It was a fundamental alteration of his capabilities that added a new dimension to his already impressive kit and created new strategic possibilities that would reshape how he was played and countered. The evolution, called the Mega Uppercut, reflects the Mega Knight's backstory in a charming way. According to the card description, Mega Knight's other great love, besides his mustache, is boxing. This single sentence adds personality while explaining the new ability. The Mega Knight had trained in boxing, developed a devastating uppercut technique, and now that skill was being showcased on the battlefield. The mechanical implementation of the uppercut is elegantly simple, yet profoundly impactful. With every regular attack, the evolved Mega Knight performs an uppercut that launches the targeted troop backward 4 tiles toward the nearest enemy crown tower. This knockback is consistent regardless of troop weight. A skeleton gets knocked back the same distance as a golem. The 4-tile distance isn't arbitrary. It's precisely calibrated to trigger the Mega Knight's jump attack range, creating a devastating combo potential where he uppercuts a target. The target lands 4 tiles away, which triggers the jump range, so he jumps and hits them again, then uppercuts again, creating a cycle that can lock single targets in an inescapable loop until they reach the crown tower. The visual design of the evolution reflects his enhanced status. His armor shifts from black to an elegant amethyst hue, that rich purple that has historically signified royalty and power. His eyes change from blue to magenta with glowing pink sclera, giving him an almost mystical appearance that suggests the evolution is more than just physical enhancement, it's magical transformation. The spikes on his maces gain golden frames and handles, his chainmail develops gold linings, and his belt is upgraded with golden spikes and the card evolution symbol. These aesthetic changes ensure the evolved Mega Knight is instantly distinguishable from his base form, crucial for both the player deploying him and opponents who need to recognize what they're facing. The strategic implications of the uppercut ability are enormous and immediately apparent to experienced players. The base Mega Knight, S' primary weakness in dueling situations was that single high DPS troops could often trade favorably against him. A mini P.E.K.K.A. to be placed to intercept him, taking the spawn damage but then fighting him relatively effectively. The evolved Mega Knight completely changes this interaction. The mini P.E.K.K.A. gets uppercutted backward, preventing her from attacking effectively, then jumped on for double damage, then uppercutted again. The cycle repeats until either the mini P.E.K.K.A. dies or reaches the tower, and throughout this process, she's dealing minimal damage to the Mega Knight because her attacks are constantly interrupted. This interaction change cascades through the entire counter hierarchy. Cards that once traded evenly or favorably against the base Mega Knight suddenly struggle against the evolution. Prince charges in but gets uppercutted mid-charge, negating his charge damage and making him vulnerable. Sparky charges her shot but gets knocked back before firing, effectively reset without Zap or Electro Wizard. Even P.E.K.K.A., the premier Mega Knight counter, has trouble because while she has enough health to survive the uppercut jump cycle, her slow attack speed means she's taking far more hits than she can dish out, turning a favorable matchup into something much more even. The evolution's defensive capabilities surpass even the base Mega Knight's impressive performance. When defending against single tank pushes Royal Giant, Giant, Golem, Electro Giant, the evolved Mega Knight can be placed on them and will repeatedly uppercut them backward, preventing them from reaching the tower while the Mega Knight and towers deal damage. What makes this particularly devastating is that these tanks often have death damage or lingering effects when they reach towers, but the evolved Mega Knight can prevent them from ever getting there, completely negating their intended function. However, the evolution isn't without weaknesses, and understanding these is crucial for both using and countering it effectively. Swarm's still overwhelming because the uppercut only affects the main target. His area damage still hits multiple enemies, but only one gets knocked back per attack. A well-timed skeleton army, goblin gang, or minion horde can surround and eliminate him before the uppercut provides significant value. Air troops remain his fundamental counter. He cannot uppercut what he cannot reach, and flying units are immune to his most dangerous new ability. Building counters become more important against the evolution, because the uppercut can lock single troops in cycles. Placing buildings to pull him becomes the safer defensive strategy. An Inferno Tower placed correctly melts him before he reaches it, and even if he does, it's a building, not a troop, so the uppercut provides no additional value. Tesla, Cannon, Goblin Cage all, these building options become premium responses to the evolution in ways they were unnecessarily against the base version. The cycle requirement for the evolution adds strategic depth. Like all evolutions, the Mega Knight requires one cycle to deploy the evolved version, meaning you deploy him twice, and every other deployment is evolved. This creates interesting decision points. Do you waste a base Mega Knight deployment to get the evolution in cycle? Do you hold your Mega Knight until you know the next one will be evolved? How do you track opponent cycles to predict when they'll have access to the evolution? These questions add layers to gameplay that reward planning and game sense. The evolution's release was handled through multiple avenues, reflecting Supercell's approach to evolution accessibility. Players could obtain it free by earning 55 crowns on 6 separate days during the Fight Night Evolution event, which ran until September 25th. This gave dedicated free-to-play players access without spending money. Alternatively, it could be purchased directly through in-app purchase, typically bundled with exclusive emotes and other bonuses for around $10. After the initial release period, it became available through standard Evolution Shard collection, level-up chests, season shop purchases, and lucky drops. The community reaction to the evolution was predictably mixed, as with any powerful new addition. Some players celebrated having a reason to use their upgraded Mega Knights again, excited by the fresh gameplay the uppercut provided. Others lamented that an already strong card had been made stronger, worried about balance implications and the meta becoming dominated by evolution Mega Knight strategies. Content creators immediately began testing, producing guides on optimal use and counter strategies, while competitive players integrated it into their tournament decks or developed specific answers to handle it. Balance adjustments came relatively quickly, suggesting Supercell was monitoring the evolution's impact carefully. On January 15th, 2025, a maintenance break adjusted the evolution so he would no longer jump on enemies that were knocked back by his attack. This change was crucial. It prevented the infinite loop potential, where a single target would be trapped indefinitely. After this adjustment, the Mega Knight would uppercut a target, but if that target was the only one in range, he'd walk toward it, rather than immediately jumping, giving the target time to potentially escape or be supported by other defending troops. A subsequent update on March 31st, 2025 increased the evolved Mega Knight's spawn damage by 0.23% and fixed various bugs, including interactions with Electro Giant and ground troops crossing rivers after being knocked up. These precise adjustments show the ongoing balancing act required to keep the evolution powerful and exciting while preventing it from becoming oppressive or frustrating to face repeatedly. Deck building around the evolution requires different considerations than the base Mega Knight, because the evolution excels at locking single targets but remains vulnerable to swarms and air. Pairing him with splash support and air defense becomes even more crucial. Wizard Executioner, or Magic Archer behind the evolution Mega Knight, creates a combination that handles both his weaknesses. The support deals with swarms and can hit air targets, while the evolution handles single threats and tanks damage. Spells become more important too. Having zap or arrows to clear swarm counters, or lightning to eliminate building counters, can be the difference between the evolution reaching the tower or being shut down for a negative trade. The evolution also creates interesting psychological dynamics. Opponents who know you have the evolution in cycle will play more conservatively, holding swarms or buildings specifically for it. This allows your base Mega Knight deployments to potentially get more value, as opponents are over-preparing for the evolution and underestimating the base version. Conversely, if opponents don't realize when you have the evolution available, they might attempt single-unit counters that worked against the base version, but fail catastrophically against the evolution, leading to tower losses or massive damage. The Evolution Mega Knight represents more than just a powerful card variant. It's a statement about Clash Royale's ongoing evolution, about how legendary cards can continue to receive attention and development years after their initial release. It validates the time and resources players invested in upgrading their Mega Knights by giving that investment renewed relevance. And it adds another layer to the rich strategic tapestry that makes Clash Royale endlessly replayable, where even familiar cards can surprise you with new capabilities, new interactions, and new ways to approach the eternal dance of attack and defense that defines every match. Meta impact through the ages. The Mega Knight's influence on the Clash Royale meta has been profound and persistent, but it hasn't been static. Like the meta itself, his position within the strategic landscape has shifted, sometimes holding a dominant position, other times fading to niche use, always relevant but never unchangingly so. Tracking his meta impact over the years tells the story of Clash Royale's evolution as a game. In his release period, September through November 2017, the Mega Knight's meta impact was immediate and disruptive. Usage rates spiked dramatically, especially on ladder where players who obtained him early had significant advantages. The meta hadn't fully adapted, yet counter strategies weren't refined. Deck compositions hadn't adjusted to account for his presence. This created what could be called the honeymoon period, where the Mega Knight felt stronger than he actually was, simply because the collective knowledge of how to handle him hadn't developed. The first post-release meta saw the rise of what players called Mega Knight defenses, deck archetypes specifically built to counter him. Inferno Tower usage climbed significantly. P.E.K.K.A decks proliferated. Building heavy strategies that could kite and distract him became popular. This was the community's immune response, the collective adaptation to a new threat. The Mega Knight remained powerful and popular, but his win rates normalized as players learned both how to use him effectively and how to counter him efficiently. By early 2018, the Mega Knight had settled into the meta as a stable presence rather than a dominant force. He was common enough that every viable deck needed to account for him, but not so overwhelming that he appeared in every match. This equilibrium represented healthy balance. The card was impactful without being oppressive. Certain archetypes naturally countered him. Others struggled against him, creating a rock-paper-scissors dynamic that kept the meta diverse. The mid-2018 meta saw interesting developments as new cards were released that interacted with the Mega Knight in unique ways. The Magic Archer's long-range splash damage provided efficient chip alongside or against Mega Knight. The Royal Hogs created fast pressure that demanded responses, making Mega Knight defensive spawns riskier as you needed elixir for other threats. Each new card release subtly shifted the Mega Knight's position, not through direct changes to him, but through changes to the ecosystem around him. The 2019 meta period, following his late 2019 buff to hit speed, saw renewed Mega Knight prominence. The increased attack frequency made him more threatening in duels and more effective at clearing troops. Usage rates climbed, particularly in bridge spam variations that paired him with fast pressure cards. The meta adapted again, but this time, the Mega Knight had slightly better tools to fight back against his counters, creating a more contested landscape where both Mega Knight decks and anti-Mega Knight decks jockeyed for supremacy. Tournament play throughout these years showed the Mega Knight's competitive viability fluctuating. In some major tournaments, he saw high representation, particularly in formats favoring defensive play and counter pushes. In others, faster cycle decks or heavy beatdown strategies that could overwhelm his defensive capabilities dominated, pushing him to the fringes. His tournament presence was always respectable, but rarely dominant, suggesting balanced design that allowed skilled play with multiple archetypes rather than centralizing around one strategy. The 2020 meta, influenced by global shifts and increased playtime during lockdowns, saw the Mega Knight become somewhat controversial on ladder. His overleveling on ladder created frustration among mid-range players who lacked properly leveled counters. The perception of him as low skill or a crutch became more prominent in community discussions. Those statistics showed that at equal levels and high skill, he remained balanced. This disconnect between perception and reality highlighted how psychological factors and level-dependent interactions can create meta-narratives that diverge from actual balance. The introduction of champions in late 2021 added new dynamics. Champions with their abilities provided tools that could handle the Mega Knight in novel ways. Archer Queen's Cloak could avoid his attacks while dealing damage. Golden Knight's Dash could reposition around him. Monk's Reflect could turn his own damage against him. Each champion release subtly altered the Mega Knight's meta position, not dramatically, but incrementally, as the game's complexity increased and new interaction possibilities emerged. The 2022 meta saw multiple balance passes that tweaked various cards around the Mega Knight without directly changing him. Support troops he commonly paired with received adjustments. Counter cards were buffed or nerfed. These indirect changes affected his performance more than many players realized. A nerf to Battle Ram or Bandit weakened bridge spam Mega Knight decks. A buff to Cannon made building kiting strategies more viable against him. The meta isn't just about individual cards, but about the web of interactions between all cards, and changes anywhere in that web ripple out to affect everything else. The Evolution update in 2023 fundamentally altered meta considerations around the Mega Knight. The existence of evolutions for other cards meant more threats that demanded responses, more decision points about when to commit Elixir, more layers of strategic depth. The Mega Knight remained relevant, but is part of a more complex ecosystem where evolved Barbarians, evolved Firecracker, and other enhanced cards competed for deck slots and mental attention. The Mega Knight Evolution's release in September 2024 created perhaps his most significant meta impact since his original launch. Suddenly, the Mega Knight wasn't just a solid defensive card with counter-push potential. He was a potentially game-ending threat that could lock down single-target defenses and force opponents into specific counter strategies. Usage rates spiked again. Deck diversity shifted as players either incorporated the evolution or built specifically to counter it. The meta during this period was defined in large part by Evolution Mega Knight presence and the strategies that emerged to handle or leverage him. The quick balance adjustments to the evolution, the jump change in January 2025, the spawn damage increase in March showed active meta management. Supercell was monitoring win rates, usage rates, and player feedback, making targeted changes to keep the evolution powerful without letting it become oppressive. This active management style, responding to meta developments rather than waiting for scheduled balance passes, reflected lessons learned from years of live service game operation. Throughout all these meta periods, certain truths about the Mega Knight remained constant. He was always better on ladder than in tournaments due to level advantages. He was always more popular among mid-range players than pros, who often preferred more reliable or flexible win conditions. He was always controversial, beloved by users, and frequently complained about by opponents. And he was always relevant, never completely dominant, but never falling into irrelevance, maintaining a consistent presence that marked him as one of the game's defining cards. The current meta, as of early 2025, sees the Mega Knight in what might be his healthiest state yet. The evolution provides high-power gameplay for those who enjoy it. The base version remains viable and accessible. Counter strategies are well understood, but not trivializing. Deck diversity is high, with Mega Knight fitting into multiple archetypes without dominating any. This represents years of iterative balancing, community adaptation, and thoughtful design reaching a plateau where power, accessibility, and counterplay exist in reasonable equilibrium. The meta impact through the ages tells a story beyond just one card's rise and fall. It tells the story of a living game that changes and grows, where yesterday's dominant strategy becomes today's counterable approach, where players and designers engage in an endless dance of innovation and response. The Mega Knight has been a major character in this story from 2017 to the present, a constant presence whose impact has waxed and waned, but never disappeared. Understanding his meta journey helps us appreciate not just the card, but the dynamic, ever-shifting landscape of competitive Clash Royale, where nothing stays the same for long, where adaptation is constant, and where even the mightiest warriors must evolve or be left behind. Tournament legacy and competitive play. While the Mega Knight has always been popular on ladder, his competitive tournament legacy presents a more nuanced picture. Tournament play, with its level caps and best-of-3 formats, creates a different environment where raw power matters less than consistency, versatility, and player skill. The Mega Knight's journey through competitive play reflects both his strengths and his limitations at the highest levels of play. The first major competitive appearance of the Mega Knight came at the Clash Royale World Finals in December 2017, just 3 months after his release. Several competitors included him in their lineups, primarily in bridge spam configurations. The results were mixed. Some players found great success with him, leveraging his defensive power to shut down opponent pushes and create devastating counterpressure. Others struggled, finding that top-level opponents had already developed counter strategies that neutralized his impact. This debut established a pattern that would persist. The Mega Knight was viable competitively, but not dominant. Effective in the right hands and matchups, but not universally optimal. The Clash Royale League throughout 2018 saw fluctuating Mega Knight representation. In the first season, he appeared in roughly 20 to 25% of deck lists, a healthy but not overwhelming presence. Certain players became known for their Mega Knight mastery, showcasing intricate timing and placement that extracted maximum value from every deployment. These showcase matches did more than just win games. They educated the player base on optimal Mega Knight technique, raising the general skill level around the card across the entire community. One particularly memorable competitive moment came during the Crown Championship 2018, when a player executed a perfect Mega Knight spawn that eliminated an entire push worth over 20 elixir, then counterpushed for the 3 crown victory. This play became a highlight reel moment, shared across social media and YouTube, cementing the Mega Knight's reputation for spectacular game-swinging potential. But for every highlight play, there were dozens of matches where the Mega Knight performed adequately without creating these dramatic moments, reflecting the reality that consistent, efficient play often matters more than spectacular ceiling. The 2019 competitive season saw an interesting development: the rise of Mega Knight Minor Poison as a tournament-viable archetype. This control-focused deck leveraged the Mega Knight's defensive prowess while using Minor and Poison for consistent chip damage. The strategy was patient, almost defensive, waiting for opponents to overcommit and punishing them with efficient Mega Knight defenses, then slowly chipping away with Minor Poison cycles. Multiple players piloted variations of this deck to success in Clash Royale League and Crown Championship qualifiers, proving that the Mega Knight could anchor control strategies at the highest level, not just aggressive bridge spam. However, the 2020 competitive meta saw reduced Mega Knight presence as cycle decks like Hog Cycle and X-Bow gained prominence. These faster cycling strategies could bait out the Mega Knight, then push when he was out of cycle, or spread pressure across both lanes to prevent the Mega Knight from providing single-lane defensive dominance. The competitive meta demonstrated a truth about the Mega Knight: he excels against certain strategies but struggles against others, making him a meta-dependent choice rather than a universally strong pick. The introduction of best-of-5 formats in certain tournaments created interesting strategic dynamics around the Mega Knight. Players would include him in their lineups, not for every match, but for specific matchups where he excelled. This selective deployment showed sophisticated meta reading, recognizing that the Mega Knight was a tool for specific jobs rather than a universal solution. The format also allowed players to ban out Mega Knight in matches where they had poor answers, adding another layer of strategy around when and how to include him in competitive play. The Clash Royale World Finals 2021 saw a memorable Mega Knight performance in the Grand Finals, where a top player used him in a critical Game 5 situation, spawning him perfectly to shut down a match point push and turn the game around for an eventual championship victory. This clutch performance under maximum pressure showcased why players continue to trust the Mega Knight competitively. His ability to create swing moments in crucial situations provides insurance against catastrophic push breakthrough that could end matches or series. The monthly seasonal tournaments that Supercell introduced provided another data point for Mega Knight competitive viability. These tournaments, accessible to all players, but with tournament standard levels, showed consistent but moderate Mega Knight representation. Win rates hovered around 50 to 53% across these events, suggesting he was balanced, viable, and effective without being overpowered. Players who mastered him performed well. Those who misused him struggled. This skill dependency is the hallmark of good competitive card design. The Evolution Mega Knight's arrival in competitive play created immediate controversy and adjustment. Initial tournaments featuring the Evolution saw high ban rates. Players respected his power enough to frequently ban him out rather than try to counter him. As counter strategies developed, ban rates decreased and actual play rates increased, with players incorporating the Evolution into various archetypes or building specific answers into their decks. The Evolution's competitive presence was stronger than the base Mega Knights had ever been, suggesting that while the base version was balanced for competitive play, the Evolution pushed closer to dominance. Certain professional players became synonymous with Mega Knight mastery. Their gameplay videos and tournament performances served as masterclasses in optimal deployment timing, positioning precision, and strategic decision-making around when to hold versus when to commit the 7 elixir. Analyzing these top-tier Mega Knight pilots revealed techniques that weren't immediately obvious: specific placements that maximize spawn damage, timing patterns that predicted opponent plays, elixir management that ensured the Mega Knight was available for critical defensive situations. The competitive legacy of the Mega Knight isn't measured solely in championship wins or dominant meta periods. It's also measured in his consistency. He's never completely disappeared from competitive play since his release. While his representation percentage has varied, he's maintained continuous presence across multiple years and evolving metas. This longevity in competitive relevance is rarer than many players realize. Most cards cycle through periods of competitive viability and irrelevance. The Mega Knight's sustained, if fluctuating, presence demonstrates fundamental design that continues to provide value at the highest skill levels. The tournament formats themselves influence Mega Knight viability. In single elimination tournaments where one loss means elimination, the Mega Knight's swing potential, his ability to completely shut down pushes and turn games around, made him attractive despite inconsistencies. In double elimination or round-robin formats where consistency across many games mattered more, players sometimes opted for more reliable, if less spectacular cards. This format sensitivity added another dimension to competitive deck-building decisions around whether to include him. Analyzing competitive statistics reveals interesting patterns. The Mega Knight. S tournament win rate has historically been highest in the hands of players with over 1,000 tournament wins, suggesting significant skill dependency. Conversely, players with fewer than 100 tournament wins show below 50% win rates with Mega Knight decks, indicating that while the card was powerful, extracting the power required experience and game sense that novice tournament players often lacked. This skill gradient is part of what keeps the Mega Knight interesting competitively. Mastery provides tangible advantages. The future of the Mega Knight in competitive play likely involves continued adaptation and evolution. As new cards release, new interactions will emerge. As players continue refining techniques and strategies, the ceiling for Mega Knight play will continue to rise. And as the game's competitive scene grows and develops, the Mega Knight will remain a consistent presence, sometimes more prominent, sometimes less, but always part of the conversation about viable competitive strategies. His tournament legacy isn't about domination, but about enduring relevance, about being a card that players at the highest level continue to respect, prepare for, and occasionally choose to wield in the most important matches of their competitive careers. Cultural impact and memes, beyond statistics and strategies, beyond win rates and deck archetypes. The Mega Knight has achieved something that transcends gameplay. He's become a cultural phenomenon within the Clash Royale community. Memes, jokes, recognition, and collective experiences have transformed him from merely a card into an icon with cultural significance that extends beyond his mechanical function. The phrase "the force of 1,000 mustaches" became an instant meme upon the Mega Knight's release. Players latched onto the absurd specificity of it. Why mustaches? Why 1,000? What does that even mean as a unit of force? As the echoes of the arena fade and the dust of battle settles, our journey with the mighty warrior comes to an end. The tale of the Mega Knight, his strength, his honor, his thunderous descent, now rests quietly in the night beside you. If your eyes grow heavy, let them close. If your thoughts drift, let them wander. For even legends sleep, and so should you. Before you go, traveler, tell me this. Which character should we explore next? Your voice guides the next story, the next legend, the next night's dream. And if you've enjoyed this calm journey through steel and shadow, consider subscribing. It helps this little corner of the Clash universe grow, and ensures you never miss the next bedtime lore. Thank you for sharing these quiet moments with me. Sleep well, traveler. May your dreams be gentle, and your battles tomorrow be light.